roll?
Yes, I believe we are. And I'm recording, so you can start when you would like.
All right. Good evening. This is the Wilmette Park District regular meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners for Monday, September 14th, 2020. We'll start with the roll call.
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes, here.
Commissioner Murdoch?
Here.
Commissioner Clark?
Here.
Commissioner Wolf?
Here.
Commissioner Schisler?
Here.
Commissioner Goebel?
Here.
And Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. We've got some catch up from prior meetings where they've been corrected, edited, cleaned up, enhanced. Can I get a motion to approve the November 13th, 2019 Committee of the Whole minutes as amended?
So moved. Second.
All right. Anybody got any further edits, questions, comments, changes?
You know, because I don't have the minutes in front of me, and I don't remember when which minutes these were, but there was some place where we discussed why our reserve was set at a certain point, a certain amount. And I think there are like 3 extra zeros in those numbers. This whole paragraph about discussing where reserves should be set and what,
Celia, that was
Yeah.
from that's in the April 13th.
April. Oh, okay, it's the April. Okay,
Yeah,
so that's.
I have the same thing.
I don't have the minutes in front of me. And I'd read through earlier, but that was one thing.
Yeah.
So that we were talking about that. Okay, thank you.
The nice thing about these minutes is that the changes look like they're highlighted in red, so you don't have to read the whole thing again.
Yeah. Okay.
So anybody have any changes, edits, comments? Steve, a roll call vote?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch?
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler?
He froze on me.
Commissioner Schisler?
Catch.
I
Yes.
think he's back.
Oh,
You back,
okay.
Steve?
Who's not here?
How
He's
am
still
I freezing? I'm at Village Hall connected with a hardwire, not even using Wi-Fi. Sorry. All right.
Your voice, but your face is frozen.
Yeah,
so-
we're losing it.
You don't need to see me. So here we go. Let's try this again. And if need be, Libby, you jump in if I freeze again. So roll call vote starting over on the November 13th, 2019 minutes as amended. Commissioner Abbott,
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch,
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf,
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
He's
Yes.
frozen. Oh, there he is.
All right, minutes are approved.
All right, the next are the April 13th, 2020 regular meeting minutes. Could I get a motion to approve those, please?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, so these are the ones where there is a paragraph about reserves and there are 3 extra zeros. I assume 3 extra
No,
zeros.
it's 2 extra zeros. It's on page
sure.
10. Yeah, it's on page 10. The second paragraph down, it talks about having a $400 million
$1 billion.
target. And then it says a
I wish.
900 million fund
I wish
balance.
that was a problem.
And then a 400. There's 2 extra zeros on all of those numbers in the second paragraph and the 4th paragraph in that page.
But wouldn't that be great?
Yeah,
Um,
I wish we had that problem.
Yes. Decimal
Goals.
points are important when you talk about numbers, so we will get those revised.
There was an errant T in the second paragraph of the first page of those meeting minutes on the second. It's just, that's all. If you're going to, if third line, second paragraph, it's the first page of those meeting minutes. Should be doing FT, we will consider, I don't know, that's a small thing.
All right, but we can approve the minutes as corrected for the 2 zeros and all the numbers.
Yes.
Okay. Any other, those were good catches. Anything else?
Remember anything else?
Okay, let's take the roll call, Steve.
Commissioner Abbott,
As amended, yes.
Commissioner Murdoch,
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf,
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Minutes are
All right.
approved as amended and corrected.
Okay, last set of minutes to approve is a little bit more current, May 11th, 2020, regular meeting. Could I have a motion to approve them, please?
So move.
Second.
Okay. Any edits, changes, questions, comments? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Abbott,
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch,
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf,
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
All right. Next item on the agenda is communications and correspondence. In the packet, there was one email from Luella Levy or Levy. I don't know which, and I apologize because I know I spelled it or pronounced it wrong at least once there. She gave us kudos for the setting up the lap swimming, and I know we've had a few emails come in today, Steve. They may have been more for the Parks and Rec group, but is there anything that was specific to the board or not relevant to Parks and Rec?
I think all the emails that came through late in the day today were directed towards Parks and Rec, and I think Commissioner Murdoch recognized, if not all of them, nearly all of them during that meeting.
So no subject that's unique that we haven't touched on tonight.
Correct.
Okay, great. All right, looks like we've got public comment up next. And Steve, you want to handle it from there?
Sure. I will go across the screen and call out names. First, I see Walter Keats. He's waving at me that he's good. He spoke in the prior meeting at the Parks and Recreation Committee. Scanning across, Alan Golden is who I see next.
Yeah, I made all my comments at the Parks and Recreation Committee meeting. We hope that all the emails that were sent through Walter's little domain make it to every one of the commissioners and that you read them carefully. They were all detailed and quite extensive. So please make sure you read those.
Thank you. Seeing next, Derek.
Hello, my name is Derek Castile. I live at 2447 Pomona Lane. I just participated in the Parks and Rec meeting. Wanted to share that there was some discussion there about a recent survey that was done by Park District staff. A survey was sent out via email to what I was told was over 10,000 different email addresses. It was done in 2 waves. The first wave got about 600 and some odd responses. The second one got 140 something responses. My concern is that in talking with my neighbors and those in the immediate vicinity of the community play fields, a majority of them have said that they did not get the survey. So it raises the concern for me that a lot of the feedback that y'all are receiving that you're potentially basing your decision on in terms of what amenities would be added to the play fields is being provided by people that don't live in the immediate vicinity of the play fields. I understand that that you all are asked to balance competing interests. The playfields are a big revenue generator for the Park District, and that revenue comes from sports leagues around the village, and also from my understanding from sports teams outside of the village as well. I'm hopeful that you won't place the interests of those that don't live in the vicinity of the playfields over over the interests of those that do live in this neighborhood and rely on it as a park. I know in talking to my neighbors that we are all understanding that this place was named the community playfields for a reason, because it hosts sports leagues. But I think that we can satisfy all interests by not necessarily having to build permanent restroom structures that would be right outside of our backyards, paved running tracks right along our property borders, and some of these other amenities that are being talked about. And that's all I have to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'm seeing Bill Lamporidis.
Hi, everybody. And for the record, I didn't get the survey either. So I just have questions, not comments. And I was hoping I could get some information. So access to the South Beach at Gilson Park along Overlook Drive has been dramatically reduced since Labor Day. All the gates on the temporary fence appear to be locked most of the time on most days. So my question is why? My second question is, considering the fence is abandoned most of the time by Park District staff, what purpose does it serve? My third and final question is the question I asked the Lakefront Committee, which I did not get a consensus response on. This is my most important question. What is the process for deciding when the fence will come down? Who decides? How is the decision going to be made? And what is the criteria for making that decision? Thank you.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah.
Your email was received by the board and has stimulated some conversation. We'll be returning to these issues in the Lakefront report for later in the meeting. So you may want to stick around and listen to that. I'm sure that we'll be discussing these issues.
Thank you. I appreciate answers to those questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Seeing next, Rick Prohoff.
Good evening, Rick Prohoff, 21, I'll give you a different number, 2435 Pomona Lane in Wilmette. I also appeared at the Parks and Recs meeting that was just occurred. And as far as community playfields is concerned, I think there was a general tone of disappointment with the lack of transparency on that. And then also the assurances from Commissioner Murdoch that there is no final decisions having been made and that this board will make additional inquiries, as will the committee, to establish a real plan so that people can actually review it before you start spending the money. That having been said, I find it rather galling that notwithstanding the pandemic, that you are still only now approving minutes, and yet you've already authorized apparently the spending of money, at least for the irrigation system. Now, you may consider that outside the realm of spending money, but it's only within at these on-site meetings that we discovered that the estimate of $500,000 for irrigation over the tank has been extended to a second phase, and it will cost you over $750,000. Where was the discussion? Where was the approval? And we can't see minutes. That's unlawful. I mean, I told the committee that I really don't want to go overboard. My focus has been about the park, not your proceedings as to whether they're actually compliant with the law. But, to say you missed a meeting or two, I can understand. Everybody was taken by shock in March. But we're in September, and you're only approving minutes and amending minutes from November of last year, when you're making critical decisions and move forward with this kind of expenditure of monies that really have not been totally transparent. So I appreciate the fact that you do the best you can. But sometimes what you do is also important to know how we're doing it. And I don't feel that this board or the people at the staff, notwithstanding the survey that's coming here a year later. So if you want input, it's before you decide about bathrooms and discuss them in November and not share it till a meeting with the village park, not the park board, but the village put up the deck about bathrooms and these various numbers for the IGA. I've still not seen any because we don't even have minutes.
Sure.
Okay, so I truly think as far as the amenities are concerned, you're going to do the irrigation. I just want to know that the process is actually handled in a lawful manner, and I don't know that it has been. And I can't imagine that this board approved a phase 2 to take the irrigation system $250,000 greater than the estimate that was just there in March. That's appalling. So forgive me, but I suggest you look into what the law requires, and don't tell me you have personnel issues. We all have personnel issues. We all have challenges now. But to say you can't lawfully abide and comply with the law after 6 months, that's not acceptable to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing next, I see Bridge.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I was earlier on the Park and Recreation meeting as well, so thank you for having me as well. I'm on 2427 Pomona Lane in Wilmette. And as others have said, I think lack of transparency is definitely not going to be helpful to all of us. Let's not make us feel that taking the advantage of the pandemic to make the residents around the park feel less important in what's going on, right? It seems that way. Transparency is important. I mean, you have noticed that folks around the park, nearby residents, and even those who use the park on a daily basis, and not just for weekend sports, are voicing their ongoing concerns. So you should make that one of the main factors in limited number of surveys you got. By the way, I couldn't get the link to work. I couldn't take for the record, I couldn't take the survey as well. And there are many like that who couldn't get the surveys out there. So I understand out of 10,000, you only got 141. Right? I can assure you, if you weren't for the pandemic, you probably have 1,000 plus, just like the survey we had for the trees over this last summer. As far as stuff like restrooms, as a part of possible compromise, I feel like you don't need to bring construction in the middle of the park. Perhaps around the schools by WGHS or tennis court perhaps could be a compromise if you really want to spend money on construction, as that seems like you'll end up doing it at some point. And I think as far as my observation, as I mentioned earlier, public restrooms that's used 7 to 8 months a year becomes highly unpleasant within 3 to 4 years. You can go check yourself on any restroom, any public restrooms in any park. Not at all, in my opinion, a wise area to spend money, but if you must make it, if it has to make sense, that compromise by schools or tennis court, it helps all the age group potentially. That's one. And also, I think let's not also come up with ways to keep spending money on construction, ongoing construction basis with lots of ideas in these very challenging times. I think we all have to be very, very careful. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Seeing next on the screen, Julia Marin.
I cannot hear Miss Marin.
Okay.
Can anyone else?
I couldn't either. I thought maybe it was just me having technical difficulty again. I see her lips moving and she is unmuted, but I'm not hearing her.
I don't either.
You have headphones on or something?
And then she's saying no.
Maybe the volume button for the microphone.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll come back to you, Miss Marin, if you can try and figure it out, but I'll come back to you, okay? All right, seeing next on the screen, Richard Pinner.
Yeah, thank you, good evening. Richard Pinner, 2443 Pomona Lane. I've made most of my comments by email earlier this afternoon because I wouldn't be able to fit them into a 3-minute window, so I appreciate the attention that email will receive. I just wanted to echo a little bit the survey results that are being reviewed and have been published. I commented at the last meeting that the survey was flawed and you kindly reviewed it and amended it and resent it. I still found it astounding that 10,000 supposed recipients were sent and only 600 responded in the first wave. An amended version was resent and only 140 responded. And what concerns me and many others that surround the park is the people that you're asking use those facilities for 1 hour a day, 3 weeks or 4 weeks of the year, and don't really have to live and manage and put up with the surroundings that would become if some of these improvements go forwards. Thank you again.
Thank you. Next, I'm seeing Eric Martin.
Hi, Steve. Thanks. No questions for me. I'm just here to observe tonight.
Great. Thank you. Next, I'm seeing Van Economou.
I'm muted. Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to reiterate my comments made earlier regarding the, I guess, substitution of funds that would normally have gone to the community play field that would be taken from the agreement funds that are given by the village. In other words, we don't want to be spending money that we don't have, so let's give community playfield the normal funds out of the regular park district budget before we start dipping into the village of Wilmette funds. That's all I have.
Thank you. And I believe many of you probably have seen it, but just for the audio record, Miss Marin, who was having the audio issues, typed a message into the chat. I'm going to read it. I live at 2307 Pomona Lane. My sentiments are the same as my neighbors on Pomona Lane. My concern is that the restrooms will be in the middle of the park and generate more people coming in to use the park. I am concerned about maintenance and security. And then she says no need to come back to her. All right, now I'm going to move on to make sure I haven't missed anyone. I see an email address, hiho51@gmail. Do you wish to address the committee?
The board.
The board, sorry. All right, I'm not seeing them taking us up on it. So I believe that's covered everybody from the public who are part of the meeting. If I'm wrong, please unmute yourself and let us know. Great, thank you. Back to you, Commissioner Anderson.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the stormwater presentation from the Village of Wilmette.
So with us tonight, we have Bridget Berger, Director of Engineering and Public Works, as well as Darren Olson, one of their hired engineers. They're going to give a presentation regarding Hibbert Park, and I will turn it over to Ms. Berger now.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Good evening, everybody. Thank you again for having us and sharing a part of your agenda with us. Before I ask Mr. Olson to start the presentation, I also just want to give a thanks to Steve Wilson and Christy, as well as Tom Rishlig from Gaywold Hamilton. They've been great partners with us and have worked side by side with us on this process so far. A quick update on phase one. Obviously, we had the pandemic, which helped out our schedule. We had great weather. So we're in the restoration phase and working on the irrigation in the area that was disturbed by the fault. We hope to be putting some seed down at the end of the month, and we'll get 2 full growing seasons just in time for fall.
I was muted.
We're excited about that.
That's why.
With that, I think I'll turn the presentation over to Darren Olson, who will walk you through some slides.
So you don't have a chance now. Well, I don't know. We'll see.
All right, so the email address is now unmuted and wishes to address us. Commissioner Anderson, do you want to allow that before you move on with the presentation?
Sure, if we make it concise.
Okay.
Okay. I live on Layden Lane in Wilmette. I hope this is the appropriate time, but my concern is the entrance to K Nature Park at the end of Lane Lane. There's a gate there that was open most of the summer and is now locked. And I'm wondering whether there's been any action concerning unlocking that gate or making it an entrance into the park.
Yes. So in the committee meeting just prior to this meeting, the emails were discussed, and staff was directed to install a pedestrian gate there in that side of the park. So we will be doing that here in the next couple weeks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very concise. All right, Bridget, or
I think Darren's going to
Darren
take it
Olson?
away. Darren, I'm going to
Darren
allow
Frumel.
you to share your screen now. So
Great.
it's all yours.
Great. Thank you, Steve, Bridget, commissioners. I'm going to share my screen for the presentation. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. So we want to come back again to the Park District Board as we continue to move forward with this next phase of the village's stormwater, neighborhood stormwater storage project. And this is phase 2, Hibbert Park, that we'll be talking about tonight. And we're going to be going through some of the elements of our pre-final design plans that we've shared with the Park District and staff. So tonight we'll talk about a quick recap of the previous meetings, discussion of the upcoming project, focusing primarily on Hibbert Park portion of it, the drainage items, some grading, talk about the pump station, site restoration, construction access, and then we'll get into some next steps on the final slide. So a brief recap of our previous meetings. This started way back in April of 2019 in our engagement with the Park District, where we had a meeting both at a Park District board meeting, as well as an open house that was at Hibbert Park itself. And we got input from both Park District and the public at that meeting. We weren't even at really the conceptual level there, but we've since moved on. And the next phase that we got to was about 30% plans. And in May of this year, we had a meeting between Village and consultants and the Park District staff to kind of a kickoff meeting to take the plan from where it was in the 30% and begin to move it forward. We made a presentation based on that at the June Park District board meeting of this year. And then have progressed fairly quickly since then. We had a public meeting in July at Hibbert Park. We set up a tent. Steve and Christy were there. We met with some of the residents surrounding the park to talk about plans that were a little bit more developed at that time. They were at 65% level. And then we had a coordination meeting or coordination set of emails between the Park District and ourselves, Park District's consultant GHA and us at CBEL. Again, talking mainly about the 65% plans. And then tonight we're before you to talk about the pre-final plan. So these are the plans that aren't out to bid, but are very shortly going to be out to bid. And we've given those plans and the specifications to Steve and Tom at Gowalt Hamilton. So a little bit of project overview here. Some of the highlights of Hibbert Park. It's going to look a little bit different than community playfields. This is community was phase 1. This is phase 2. We have 10 acre feet or 3.3 million gallons of underground stormwater storage. At community, we're roughly at 20 acre feet. So this is about half the size of community. This is also going to be a little bit different in that community drained in and out via gravity. Here we will drain water in via gravity, but it will come out with a pump, and we'll get into a slide shortly that shows that. We were able to situate it away from the trees we were going to preserve. We set it back from the future building that we worked with Tanucci on back in 2019 about some potential future building footprints. So we were able to keep a setback away from that. This one here is going to be 15 feet tall, similar to what we see in the photo there. I believe in Northbrook, that was about a 12-foot tall underground storage unit. So we're going to be very much in that range, taller than what those that were able to walk with us through the community playfields one. It's going to be roughly twice as tall as that one. The bottom is going to be at elevation 604, the top at elevation 619. There's going to be about 3 feet, roughly 3 feet of earth, 2.5 to 3 feet of earth on top of the top of these storm trap units. Our rough schedule right now is in early next year, January, February of 2021, we would like to start construction. Construction at Hibbard would likely end in May of 2021, so we can get in a spring growing season and then a fall growing season. And then in talking with Tom at GHA, with the seed mixes that we're using, hopefully in spring of 2022, the field will be able to be put back into use. So I'll talk a little bit now about how the site will function, or the flood storage will function at the site. Let me, went one too far. Go back one more. Oops. Here we go. So high-level overview of how this system functions, and I've got some, this overview here. North is generally to the right. We can see Wilmette Avenue on the right. Skokie Boulevard is on the lower side of the screen. Glenview Road is to the left or to the south. Right near where the Glenview Road label is at is where the entrance to the rec center is. Just to give you some bearings, Hill Street is the street that is where most of the action will be occurring. There will be a 60-inch inflow storm sewer that will take water off of Hill Street. Again, this is underground storm sewer that's taking water from Hill Street and the storm sewer system that is connected to Hill Street. When that gets surcharged, it's going to then bring that water back into the vault. There will also be water coming from the southeast. We see a 36-inch inflow storm sewer. This is going to be a new storm sewer that brings in water from the Glenview Road area. Thielen Court, Valley View, Kilpatrick, many of those streets will be connected to this. That will bring that water in to the vault that we see here. This somewhat unique shape here is a storm trap vault. You can see the different pieces there. So all that water during severe storm events, when it gets up high enough in the system, will then flow into the vault. And then after the storm system has passed and the water levels in the storm sewer system get low enough, then that water will drain out of this vault. We see that 24-inch storm sewer outflow will go to the pump station, and from there it will be pumped back into that 60-inch storm sewer on Hill Street, where it will drain by gravity back into the village's storm sewer system. So my next slide that I previewed there was we're going to do a kind of a cross section on Hill Street. So we're going to see how water from Hill Street is able to enter the system and then how it goes back out into Hill Street after a storm event. So this is a cross section of the Hill Street storm sewer, the new 60-inch storm sewer. And on the left is generally where the intersection of Hill Street and Hibbard Road are. And here is where the system connects into, the storm sewer system connects into the village's larger trunk line on Wilmette Avenue. So what would happen during a storm event is that as this system begins to get full, water would back up in the Hill Street storm sewer. So there's a very long length of 60-inch diameter storm sewer. It would then go over an underground control structure in a large manhole. It would go over that. Then it enters into the 60-inch storm sewer that's within the park, and then makes its way into the storm trap unit where it would be stored. after a storm event, some of this water will be able to drain back out via gravity. Any of the water that's stored up above this weir elevation will then be able to drain back out via gravity. But about 75% of the storm trap unit will drain out through a 24-inch storm sewer here to a pump station, which will then be forced back into the village's storm sewer system, again, after the storm event has passed. So we will have, this pump station is designed to have sensors in the storm sewer system that will be able to sense when the water level is low, and it's then safe to begin to pump the stored water back into the village's storm sewer system after the storm has passed. So that's the general function of this system. There are other storm sewers that we're putting in throughout the neighborhood. Generally, they drain into one of these two inflow pipes and allow that water, when necessary, to back up into the storm trap system. I'm going to talk a little bit more in these next slides about some of the improvements that will be made to the park site during this project. So on the north side here where the storm trap unit is, and again, we can see on the lower part of the screen, we see Skokie Boulevard. Generally, north is to our right. Wilmette Avenue would just be off the screen to the right. Hill Street is up here on the top of the screen. We see the unique configuration of the storm trap system and a couple things that will be done to the park here. We're going to have a lot of under drains. We've worked extensively with Gewalt on an under drain plan. So you can see all of these black lines that have the labels. There's a number of them throughout both the baseball and then the open space here. All of these small little black lines are under drains that don't currently exist there now, but will allow the grass fields after a rain event to drain much quicker. The next major piece of infrastructure is going to be a perimeter storm sewer system. So this is a storm sewer system within the park. This is something in response to what we've seen with input from Park District staff about flooding that has occurred out here. This storm sewer system is generally going to be a 12-inch diameter storm sewer that's shown in blue here. That is going to pick up, number one, it'll pick up the under drains. So all of these under drains that are just under the surface of the field will connect into this. But then these will have inlets at key locations throughout the park, generally at the corners. So we pushed all of these surface inlets to the corners, and those are shown in green. These are where standing water on the park, that's a problem now. These would be the typical 2-foot diameter catch basin lids. They'll be there to accept surface water during a storm event. So we see we've got several of them located throughout the corners of the park. And these work hand in hand with the drainage plan and the grading that we've developed for the site. It really was developed by Gewalt Hamilton to essentially crown a lot of these areas and push that surface water runoff to the sides of the park. So this will be pushed, the baseball diamond, the outfield will be crowned and water will be pushed away from there. The open field that is located really in the northernmost tip of the park, that again is going to be crowned. And you can see these blue arrows, which is the general direction of surface water flow based on this grading plan that's been developed. And finally, there'll be two vault access points. One on this is on the west side, closest to Hill Street, where the storm sewer is coming in, and another on the far south side, tucked there at the very southern corner, near where the 36-inch storm sewer comes in from Glenview Road. Now those will be at the surface. They'll have some grading. They'll be locked, but again, they allow for access as well as for air within the storm trap unit to exit as water rushes in during a storm event. The next slide focuses more on the southeastern corner. As I mentioned, there is Here it's just a storm sewer system that is coming off of Glenview Road that's shown in blue. That storm sewer system drains this excess water, again, underground through a 36-inch diameter. And you can see here where it ties into just the southern part of the storm trap unit. Again, north is to our right here, and Skokie Boulevard there is just along the bottom of the page. One of the things that we've done here is there's this section of 312 linear feet where you see we've discussed directionally boring it. This area had a lot of sensitive trees. There's also the skate park and the landscaped area here that we didn't want to disturb. And so what will happen with this section is they will excavate a bore pit at the black manhole here and a receiving pit at the storm trap location. And they will actually push this pipe underground so that it does not disturb those trees or the skate park. And this pipe is going to be roughly 12 feet. The top of the pipe will be roughly 12 feet below the ground. So it's going to be extremely deep and shouldn't have any impact on any of the trees or the existing infrastructure that's there. We also have a couple of manholes that we see here. We located those generally along the path to get them out of the way of the ball field. And then we also have one manhole here for future drainage connection. So that's, and this will be right on the property line of the park and the village right away there. And we've placed a storm sewer there low enough that's dedicated to any sort of future connection that the park district would like to make for potentially draining this area or the ball field there. So moving away from drainage and onto the pump station itself. So we've now moved to the end of Hill Street. The park is to our right or to the east. Wilmette Avenue would be up towards the north. And this is the more detailed view of that pump station. We have the darker blue is this 60-inch storm sewer that, again, runs to the end of Hill. There's this underground control structure that has a weir in it. And when water gets over the weir elevation, it will then move back through that darker blue 60-inch storm sewer and into the storm trap unit. The lighter blue shows the general alignment of the outflow pipe that will go into the pump station. We can see that here with these are at grade stainless steel hatches. That is the pump station. There's nothing above ground associated with the pump station. And then that gets pumped out again to this storm trap or to the underground vault. A couple others, and I'll go kind of clockwise around this the schematic here. We've got, at the end of Hill, we show here in gray a concrete access pad. This would be a pad that would allow village trucks to pull up here. It would be concrete. They could park and access the hatches here and pull out a pump if necessary, or perform routine maintenance of the pumps without having to go through landscaped areas within the park. We see here that the sidewalk will be shifted slightly, which will allow a significant amount of landscape screening around the pump station and access pad. We worked with village staff to develop a plant list that would provide adequate screening for the pump station and the various pieces of equipment. The pump station itself, as I mentioned, is all underground. There is a concrete pad here at grade with these 4 different access hatches, which allow them to be pulled up and the pumps pulled out of there or maintenance done as necessary. Of course, those would all be locked. As we move further to the south of the pump station, we see the control panel. Having it, this would be within the landscaped area, but we'd have it. We're showing it as painted emerald green. There's the control panel itself with a little side cabinet there. That's generally the size of that is about 6 feet by 2 feet by 6 feet high. Moving next over to the generator is that the next white feature there. This is the backup generator, which will have a gas feed, and it will be approximately 8 feet by 4 feet by 6 feet high as well. Again, that's within that landscaped perimeter. We also are seeing here this line with the E's, that's the electrical feed. We're working with Park District staff there's a power pole just a little bit to the southwest of the playground there that we would get an electrical feed for the pump station. The natural gas for the backup generator would come from the underground services that currently exist at this location. So that was a summary of the pump station. One of the items we wanted to touch on was access and fencing during construction, because we know how important it is for the Park District to make sure that the trees are protected, as well as the adjacent facilities. So generally, as we indicated back in June, construction access will largely be from Wilmette Avenue. The trucks will enter and leave through there. There will be in the range of 4,000 trucks to haul out all of the soil that is being removed from the site, as well as bring in the stone that's required for the base and for the backfill. There is a possibility that some of the storm trap trucks, so these are the larger trucks that have the big concrete pieces on them, and there will be only 2 pieces per truck for this vault because they're larger pieces. Those trucks, depending on how construction is staged, those trucks may come in through Wilmette Avenue, but then leave through Hill Street. We would do some access matting that would allow them to make the turn and exit the site on Hill Street. That's a detail that we have not quite yet finalized with storm trap, but that's something that we're in the process of working through right now as we get from pre-final to final plans. Shown in red here is the fencing, and we have a significant amount of fencing around the site. It'll generally be 6 foot with the mesh on it, with the exception of the fencing that is adjacent to the residence on the west side of the project. Those fence heights will either be 8 foot or 10 foot diameter, or 10 foot height. They will have the mesh as well that we saw at Community Playfield. And with regard to the trees, you could see that the fencing here runs around the trees. We worked with Village's forester. That fencing is set off 15 feet from the trees, and there will be root pruning done ahead of time. And then where the fence then breaks off, you can see here we've worked the fence around the infield of the baseball diamond there, so that we're not going to be in the infield or in any of the dugouts. And then generally works its way around the south side, and then along the east side on Skokie Boulevard. It will run largely right along the sidewalk there. But we are anticipating that sidewalk would be totally closed from Wilmette Avenue all the way down to Glenview Road during construction. There'll be one access gate that would be on Wilmette Avenue, unless there is need for that second access for just only the storm trap trucks to leave on Hill Street. Some other details. We've worked with the geotechnical engineer. You see a comment up here talking about shoring. We're getting some additional groundwater measurements, and if necessary, if the side slopes of the excavation require, there may be a little bit of shoring that's needed, particularly along the south side, maybe some along the east side, along Skokie Boulevard, and then maybe a little bit along the northwest corner to make sure that we're providing adequate protection for the root zones of those trees. Second to last slide, I think here, the site restoration, again, is very important, and we worked with the Park District staff and GHA. The restoration will be very similar to what we see at Community Playfield. In those playable areas, we'll have the amended topsoil that'll be 8 inches thick with seed that is both drilled and hydro-seeded outside. And that's this lighter shading that we see here. The darker, more dense shading is the areas that are generally outside of what we'll call the playable areas. These are more open space. They'll have 8 inches of topsoil as well as hydro seed with the seed mix will be identical for both sides. It's the Field of Dreams mix that was specified by Park District staff. And there's some ancillary areas, parkways along sidewalks, generally along the southeastern corner there, where we do more limited disturbance. Those would generally be sod, or in the event that the Park District staff would like seed there, we can do that as well. And finally, our last slide, talking about some next steps. We're going to continue with public meetings and Park District coordination. We've had a lot of great back and forth with Park District staff and their consultants, and we look to continue that. In the end of September, on the 30th, we are hosting a virtual public meeting that will give residents in this area an opportunity to hear a very similar presentation to what you're hearing tonight, and to get their feedback on the project and answer many of their questions. We're hoping to wrap all that into some final plans that will be completed sometime in early October. Hopefully coming back to the Park District Board at the October meeting with those plans that you will have been able to review, as well as some easement documents for you to look over as well, to hopefully get those finalized as part of this project so that we can move forward into contract award in November and December, and then kick off with construction in January or February of next year. And with that, I thank you for your time, and would be more than willing to answer any questions that you have.
Gordon,
Okay.
I see Commissioner Wolf's hand up.
I just have a few questions. Sorry. You mentioned the sod versus the seed, and since we're going to be under construction, it looks like in all of next year, but then because of the ground cover, the playability of the fields would not be until spring of 2022. If it were all sod, would we have the fields in use sooner?
I think that might be a question better directed to Superintendent Solberg. That's more her area of expertise than Mr. Olson's.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
When, Darren, do you think you guys will be putting down the seed? Was that June?
We're hoping to put it down in May so that we could, the goal would be to get 2 growing seasons. We get trying to get the spring and the fall growing season in.
Yes and no. I've never had really good luck with sod. It requires a lot of water, a lot of TLC. I prefer seed personally. I think if we get it down early enough in May and we see how it grows and how it reacts, that you could potentially be out there in September, but we would have to see how the actual grounds react to the seed. Okay. But with the amended topsoils, we should have some pretty decent luck.
And we'll be watering it as well. I know we're not putting any irrigation in here, but I'm assuming that we'll be continually watering it to make it grow as quickly as possible.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. My second question is from slide 7. Sorry, I don't know if you need to pull it up again, or I can just ask my question. You have one of the storm trap access vents on the west side. So it's that one that's kind of in the middle. I'm a little concerned about that being in an area that would be an area of play, not necessarily for baseball, but more if we had some sort of another field or something there. Is that something that, because you said it will be a vent above ground, is that correct?
Darren, can you unmute?
Got it. Sorry, too many buttons popping up there on the top of my computer. Yes, that can be moved. We would like to keep it in the same general location, just because access to that western side will be critical with several pipes coming in and out. But it could get shifted to the southwest, closer to Hill Street. Certainly, there is definitely some flexibility, and we would love to have your feedback or staff's feedback on exactly where they would like that at.
Can you confirm that it's something that is above ground, though? It's not flat, it's a vent?
It is flat. It is the same type of inlet manhole. So the other green dots, and many of us have seen those 2-foot diameter inlets. This would be the exact same, and it allows then air to leave. So it would be at grade. It would look very much like a water or storm sewer inlet, but it just has a very different purpose.
I know at the community playfields, we moved as many as we could to the outskirts, but then the ones we had in the field area, we were able to cover with sod or something. Is that possible to do here, or these are going to be fully open? Not open, but like have openings in them, I should say.
We can bury these, but what we would need to do is somewhere else, then we would have to have ones that are open to vent the system.
Could we do something similar to what we did at Playfields, where we had them vented on the sides? I'm thinking more towards Skokie Boulevard or something, where it's venting on the side where there's not as much action and there's like piping out to vent it out.
We can certainly do that. This one here that you pointed out, certainly we can try to find a different spot for that, and we're certainly flexible with that. The one on the south side,
yeah, that one doesn't seem to concern me as much, but it's the ones that one and then the 2 green ones on either side of the baseball field. I'm just concerned that, some little kid's foot gets stuck in that when he's running backwards for a fly ball or something. I don't know.
Yeah, the green ones are to accept drainage.
Right.
Based on the grading plan, something needs to be at those locations. Otherwise, you would end up with standing water there.
Is there some way, though, to do it where it's somewhat concealed? I don't know. I can't remember again what we did at community playfields, but I feel like we were able to somehow conceal them better.
We can definitely push these out of the fields as absolutely far as possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be great. And then you're recommending a permanent generator. Can you give us your reasoning why it wouldn't be something that temporary generator could be brought in? Because I know that has been a concern here, and I'm sure will be a concern at Thornwood as well, given that that's also a pump system.
Sure, and that's largely a village operational question, so I'll let Bridget answer, but having the generator there at site would allow for an immediate response. If power were to be lost, then this would have a dedicated backup power source.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. I think Darren's absolutely right. It's a matter of having a belt and suspenders, reliable way to be able to pump down that tank. If the power were to go out, then chances are there's a lot of other issues going on in the village, and between the water management staff and public works staff, we're already stretched very thin. So being able to bring the generator out there, hook it up, and make sure that everything's running in time. We just don't want to risk another storm or a second wave coming through and our inability to be able to pump out that tank as quickly as possible. So we recommend a permanent generator in this location for sure.
Okay, great, thanks. Another question, the access from Wilmette Avenue for the trucks coming into the park, I'm guessing that's just a path right now. It's not wide enough for trucks and whatnot to be coming through currently. So I'm assuming you're putting in some sort of a more permanent surface there?
That is correct. We will now.
Yeah, that one.
So the area in gray there, well, there's a couple different options that we have. Because of the time of year, we likely can't pave it. But what we can do is either put down stone or the wooden access mats that you may have seen at Community.
Mhm.
And they would allow trucks to come in and out without damage to the ground itself. And then whatever we put down would be, of course, then removed after construction.
So how does that impact the playground that's like right on the other side of that red line?
Yes, so it would be fenced. The red line would be the fencing, so it would be fenced off, and then the access would then be right on the construction side of the fence.
Okay. So it won't impact the playground. We won't have to close the playground during this.
I would not envision that, no.
And then one last question. I know that in prior meetings we had talked about there were being 8 trees that are being removed on the east side, the Skokie Boulevard side. Is there any way to move those to other locations, or will they in Village or in another park, or are those, they'll have to be completely cut down?
I can answer for one of the trees I know we had talked about is the tree on the far south side. We had talked about maybe relocating that, or it was an evergreen, I believe, and so there was some discussion about using it as like a holiday tree. But the rest of them, is my understanding in talking with the village's forester, that they're simply too large and it would be too difficult to move those.
Okay, thanks so much. That's all my questions.
Thank you for those.
Great. Commissioner Anderson, I'm seeing Commissioner Murdoch's hand up next.
All right.
All right, I really, for the most part, have the same questions that Amy had, but I want to go over them again and clarify a couple of things. Starting with the manhole covers, and I think Amy had referenced slide 7. I want to look at the black, the 2 green, and the orange that are all, you talked about the black and the green. Could you refresh my memory, the orange cover that's in the middle of the baseball field? Tell me about that.
Sure. Everything that you see with an orange dot will not be visible from the surface. It will
Just
be.
wanted to verify that it is okay. With respect to the 2 green and the black, and I thought Amy asked some excellent questions and talked about kind of what could be done. I don't think I can support a plan that has any structures in the fields. You know, we talked about this back at Community Playfield, so I just want to be upfront about that from, at least from my perspective, you're going to need to find a way to get those out of the park itself. And I thought you did a great job over at the Community Playfields, and I'm hoping you can figure out something along those lines here. The 2 green ones, I would be concerned if a child's playing baseball that, you know, they could, in the outfield, could end up that's in the area of play, and the black one is very troublesome to me. So I just wanted to make that comment. I don't know where the other commissioners are. Moving on to the generator that, again, Amy had asked about. I guess a couple of questions, and maybe this could go back to Bridget. My understanding is the generator will not be operational during the rain event because we're holding water during the event. When would the generator kick on? How long after the event has passed? And then I got a couple of follow-up questions about that.
Sure. There will be sensors in the downstream storm sewers. So when the storm sewers have gone down enough, and you're correct, after the rain has stopped and the storm sewers start to drain and can receive the water that's exiting the vault, then the generator will kick on, or the pumps will kick on, and it'll drain the tank. Our concern, I guess, would be you can't beat having a permanent generator on site that's hooked up to SCADA that is automatically triggered when the receiving storm sewer is able to accept that water. There isn't any manpower involved. It's just a matter of exercising it, make sure everything is in working order. So that is the village's preference, at least in this location. We also felt that where the location of the permanent generator is in relationship to the park and the adjacent residents, the fact that we can screen it, the fact that it has such easy access right off of Hill Street, all lend itself to having a permanent generator in this location. That's not to say that a permanent generator is the correct application at Thornwood. So I think we have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. But all things considered, at least in this location, we felt it was it's the better choice.
Okay, and how often is it tested and for how long and how much noise does it generate?
It's tested once a month for approximately 30 minutes. And the noise generated, you probably wouldn't even hear from the where the adjacent homes are. They would hear a hum. So it's not a very loud operation.
Okay, great, thank you. And by the way, I understand that the pump station is underground. And I know that we had a presentation referencing Thornwood Park where there was an above ground pumping station. The fact that at least at this park you were able to get that underground, I'm very pleased to see. So thank you very much for doing that. And then I had a question about the trees again. And I did note that you are doing directional boring and we appreciate that in an effort to save the trees. But as we take a look at this drawing that's up here and we take a look at the access and fencing plan and then the site restoration plan, could you talk a little bit more about how much of the root structure is going to be affected specifically for those large trees that are on Skokie Boulevard? Because it seems to me that a good portion of the canopy is going to be, the root structure under the canopy is potentially going to be compromised, and what's the likelihood that we lose those trees? So if you go to the next page now, from that, go one more.
While Darren is pulling up.
Slip back, right, so you can see the circles.
Okay, I'll go back to, is this one you think the best one?
I was gonna suggest the access and fencing plan and then the site restoration plan right after that. I think those are probably the two most relevant.
Okay.
So that, and then you go to the next one, you can see the picture of the crown, the canopy, right?
So we met out with a village forester and we actually staked out these fencing limits and worked with him. And there is some flexibility. We know that, down here at the very southeast corner are where those two very, very large cottonwoods are at that are along Skokie. So, there may be some areas where we have to do some more sheet piling, where we have to maybe get out more than 15 feet away from the base of the tree. Maybe we go out 20 or 25 feet and put in some additional sheet piling there to go down vertically. And that way we're even further away from the root zone. But when we staked all these out, the village forester was comfortable that 15 feet would give us, with root pruning in advance, would give us an adequate distance away to protect the root zone of the trees.
Again, I did see the last point on this slide that you are willing to consider shoring in some cases, and I'm glad to hear that you are doing some root pruning in advance. That'll certainly increase the likelihood that the trees survive. Those were my questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for those.
Great, Commissioner Anderson. I see Commissioner Goebel's hand up as well.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. One of my questions has already been covered both by Commissioner Murdoch and Commissioner Wolf. So I'd like to focus on my final point, which is about the communication plan. I understand you have a meeting scheduled for the end of the month to gather community input, and just want to hear a little bit more about how that is being publicized, as well as hear from Park District staff about any plans for separate meetings that are Park District led.
Darren, I can jump in on this. Thank you for
Sure.
the question. I just even taking a step back to before we talk about the meeting that's coming up, I also want to just let the commissioners know that we sent a cover letter and a 2-page brochure with, it's an FAQ about all the types of details that we're talking about and what impacts the residents can expect regarding construction. We sent that mailing out in July to all the resident stakeholders who were in the surrounding areas surrounding the park, all the homes that are getting a storm sewer adjacent to them, as well as anybody who might be on a truck route. So that mailing went out in August. And we even took it a step further. The folks who live on Hill Street and Wilmette Avenue, who are going to see the bulk of construction, sent a letter asking them to call us, and we wanted to set up a one-on-one meeting with them just to walk through the plans, give them that personal attention that they deserve. In addition to that, September 30th, we'll have a remote online meeting. We thought we'd try this. We didn't have great attendance at the open house that we held in July. I think some folks may still be concerned about COVID and coming out in public, so we thought we'd try a remote meeting. And we're also sending a targeted mailing to that same list of resident stakeholders, anybody who's adjacent to the project, impacted by storm sewer construction. They'll get a letter inviting them to the meeting with the Zoom link information that they can sign up for. So we wanted to do a live meeting. There'll be a presentation followed by an opportunity for residents to ask questions real time. And then we'll put it on our website so anybody who can't attend the meeting can view it after the fact as well.
Great, thank you, Bridget.
And from a park district point of view, this park doesn't contemplate a whole lot of amenities within the intergovernmental agreement, but there is a field design that needs to be reviewed first by the park board, at least at a committee level, and then we would in turn have public meetings with the public as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Commissioner Anderson, I don't see
anybody else, Steve?
Well, yeah, I didn't put my hands up, but I have questions. This is Brian. May I go ahead?
Please do.
Oh, okay. So Daryl, Bridget, thank you. It's a very good presentation. And I think we've all kind of been able to anticipate a lot of these questions, which you guys did quite well in your presentation. And appreciated the questions from the other commissioners. They've handled a lot of my issues as well. But of course, I got questions. Stockpiling of dirt on the site. It's a pretty tight site, especially compared to community playfields. Are you going to be stockpiling? Can you stay within the fences?
Yes. Thank you for that question. It's a great one. The primary stockpile location will be the outfield of the baseball diamond. That is where that material, the topsoil that will remain on site, will get stockpiled there.
All right. Okay. Speaking of that, you've got a drainage system underneath there. Now that is going to be like a French drain. It won't have any actual small grate openings. You won't be able to trip over something, right? It's just pipes underground with holes in them. Is that correct?
That is correct. You're exactly correct. The underdrain system that we showed will all be underground with perforated pipe that will allow the water just below the ground surface to trickle into the pipes. It's topsoil, that we're not talking about like more permeable soils. I'm not actually trying to direct you here. It's sort of strictly Midwest Wilmette topsoil, right? So it's fairly dense, right? Actually, that's a great point, and we are purposely, in working with the Park District staff, are not going to use the topsoil from the site for the playable areas. If you see the
area.
Yeah, the lighter hatching area, that's going to be amended topsoil. So what will happen during construction is that the topsoil will get tested for various properties, from sand content to pH.
Sure.
And depending on that test, different things will be added to the topsoil to make sure that it drains better than typical Wilmette topsoil.
So we'll have a better playability on the field after rain events in that for the ball fields and the playing areas. That's your goal, right?
Yeah, all the areas will have better playability because they'll be sloped better. They'll all have under drains, and these areas will have the additional topsoil amendment.
Very good. Yeah, none of these, I'm not trying to trip anybody up here. This just want to get clarification. So in these areas, there's no irrigation. Now, to have better drainage kind of might imply that these areas may dry out faster, but we're not neither the Park District nor the village here is contemplating or advocating for irrigation. Is that right?
Correct. This park, as compared to a community playfields, does not get the level of intensity of use that playfields get. So the need to nourish the turf isn't quite as great here.
Okay. We talked about peer reviews. I'm glad you're working with Walt Hamilton, especially at this early date. Steve Wilson talked about a plan for the future park, and I do look forward to that. I do hope would like to see Gawalt. I assume this is Gawalt Hamilton. Would show us the existing park usage versus the future park usage, any changes, trees, and that sort of stuff. So I'm expecting that in the next month, Steve. Something from, I assume, Gawalt Hamilton?
Correct.
Showing the park. Okay. The overburden over the tank, how much do you, so to me, it's a sensitive question. How much soil are we putting back on top of that tank? Like a range, between so many inches and so many inches.
Sure. So the total depth will be approximately 3 feet. And
3 feet.
The top 8 inches will be that special topsoil that we're putting down in those areas. And then
Correct.
The remaining portion of it will be soil with potentially a little bit of stone just on the very top of the storm trap unit.
Will it be similar to the community playfields where we actually put we allowed the we allowed the water to drain directly into the tank? Any water that got through what's now 3 feet, which is a lot, which is good for the grass, right? Because it's not going to be perched. It's not going to feel that tank underneath it so easily. What happens to the water in that? Does it percolate through to the tank, or is it captured? Is there a
Yes, that's a really great question. That's one we thought a lot about during the design. And I'll go back to our site drainage. As you see here, we actually have under drains on top of the storm trap. And the reason for that is that we don't want, unlike community, which is drained by gravity, so all the water that drained into the tank through the top can go out via gravity. Here, any bit of water that gets into the tank, we have to pump out. And so we are purposely designing this system here to, all these under drains will take the water around the storm trap unit and take it out separately rather than allowing it to infiltrate into the storm trap unit. So that's why you see, particularly on the north side of this, you see an awful lot of under drains that will actually be on top of the storm trap unit.
Now those are in the locations where we're anticipating playing fields, one of a ball field and then some sort of soccer-ish kind of a rectangular field to the north. The other areas over the tank, no drainage in those areas. Those were just no drainage in those areas, and with 3 feet of cover, that's okay.
Yes, those areas will be regraded such that the surface is at a more of a 1 to 1.5% slope that'll allow those areas to drain. Just as we see the blue arrows here, these areas are going to be draining, directed to drain into the inlets.
Okay, that's very, very good. Do you know we have kind of the I don't know if I'd call it a sledding hill, but we have that little hill there along Skokie Boulevard. And this is going to disrupt that hill. Is that hill coming back?
So that's
gone?
Exactly a topic that we want to discuss with the field design. There's actually some contemplation of extending that hill and making it a little bit more of an amenity for the community. But that's the kind of discussion we want to have.
So that's what Gawalt Hamilton will address when we get their plans, correct? And we could, and that hill's what, 4 or 5 feet tall, Daryl. We can handle the weight of that plus the 3 feet the overburden that we've already got on the tank.
That is correct, but to your point, we can't make it 12 feet tall, so it will have limitations based on
limitations.
Yes.
Okay. The pump station and the generator, is that sitting on parkland? I can't tell. Is that sitting on parkland? It looks like it's sitting actually on village land. Is that correct? In the streets, it is.
So this line here, the dotted line, this is the approximate property line or end of Hill Street right here. So the pump station, the access pad, and the control panel will be sitting on park property. The backup generator and underground control structure here will be sitting on village property, and the landscaping will be on both the village property and Park District property.
And is the generator going to have some sort of enclosure around it, or is it built to be self-enclosed and not pose danger to anyone?
You're right. It will be. It's not going to have a specific built structure around it, but it's self-enclosed, such that there's nothing there that's would be a danger to somebody.
Okay. When this tank fills, we talked about this the community playfields. The community playfield was higher than the streets that potentially flood. We have streets that flood. We don't have a park that floods. We have streets that flood. And if the tank were to fill at community playfields, the street would actually start to flood. Of course, we've captured most of that water already, 3 inches of that water, so it wouldn't flood as badly. What happens in an overfill? What happens in a 5-inch rainfall in this area? How does where does the excess water go?
So that's another great question. So I'll go to our cross section here that shows the top of the tank. The next lowest spot is actually the low areas on Kilpatrick, Valley View, and Phelan. So once this tank fills up at about elevation 719.5 or 720, that water, which is connected to this area by the storm sewer system, the next lowest place that water is going to find are the sags of those 3 roadways. And so those will end up filling up in events that are greater of the capacity of the storm trap.
So our park elevation is the same and the street elevations are the same as they currently are. So there should be no change in the flooding pattern except an improvement because we now have this big sponge to take up the first 3 inches, correct?
Correct.
So any overflow would act as it does now.
That is correct.
Okay, we are not taking overflow. All right, very good. And you answered, the other questions were excellent, and you've answered all of those. I look forward to seeing Gowalt's drawings, and I look forward to seeing you folks again next month. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
How about Commissioners Clark or Schischler?
I have no questions. I have no questions.
The same for myself.
Okay. I just had kind of one line of questioning. Pretty much all was else. I'm just thinking about the house that is on Wilmette Avenue, direct to the west of the what'll be an access path or an access road. And you had mentioned that there's going to be an 8 to 10 foot fence with, I think, the green, I don't know what you call it, cover on it. I'm just thinking from one of the earlier meetings, my recollection is there's going to be hundreds of trucks going up and down that path, right? And I'm thinking about how big they are and they're carrying these big loads. I'm just wondering, is that 8 to 10 foot fence enough of a fence for those neighbors? And you know, can we do more without doing something silly, or you know, kind of how are we addressing that if you were the people living in that house right next door?
Before maybe Darren can expound, I met with that homeowner, as did the couple of our forestry staff, to talk about the construction and share the impacts. And originally we talked about even building a vegetative screen this fall to help provide additional sound attenuation and visual screening from construction. But we decided anything tall enough that we could install this fall was likely not to survive. And that's when we went back to the fence really being the best visual screening for that property. I'll rely on Mr. Olson as far as the height of the fence. If they get too tall, they could become a safety hazard, and we certainly don't want to create something that could be problematic. I know 10 feet is feasible, and that's where we settled on, but I'll let Darren jump in if there's something else that I missed.
No, you're absolutely correct. Once it gets too high with that wind, with the screening material, it has danger of, during large windstorms, actually blowing over.
Sure. Is the homeowner okay? I mean, I'm sure they appreciate the personal attention.
Yeah, we had a lovely talk, and she would love to have some enhanced landscaping when the project's finished, and that's something I'll work with Superintendent Solberg on to help spruce up that edge of the property adjacent to her area. But as far as construction, I really think the fence is the way to go.
Okay, well, I think having a little plus at the end for her is probably a good neighborly thing to do.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
I happen to know their neighbor, the one that right to the west of them, and I may be talking to them. But I appreciate you being proactive and talking to the neighbors about this.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions before we move to the next item on the agenda? And thank you to Bridget and Darren. That was a great presentation. Bridget, thank you for your input as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of the voucher list. Would a chair of the Finance Committee like to make a motion? It's on page 6 of the packet in case you need a
Yes,
quick reference.
I move to approve the voucher list in the amount of $1,553,505.79.
I'll second.
You have a second.
Yes, I have a question with respect to one of the items on the voucher list. I have a question about the PNC equipment finance payment. It's the first item under the disbursements over 5,000. I noticed this wasn't in last month, so I imagine this is a quarterly or another type of installment payment.
It's
This is actually an annual installment payment. This is the second of 3 years of no interest financing for golf equipment that we purchased last year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So there'll be the similar thing in next year's capital budget as a given item that we have to include.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the voucher list?
I had a couple questions. On that same sheet, there's a charge for Walt Hamilton for stormwater consulting. That's something that's covered in the IGA, or is that an expense that is directly coming out of the Park District? Where is that being budgeted from? I guess
that is an expense coming from the Park District.
It is, okay. Second question on there's on-the-go sports for football for camp for sports. Is that flag football that we're doing moving forward, or is that something we did over the summer? I was wondering with all the regulations around COVID.
That is for a program that's already completed.
Okay. And then my third and final question, on the list further down, we have security cameras listed. I was wondering where those were being put in place. And also I noticed that they're not on the capital expenditure yet. So I was just wondering, because I know that was something that we had talked about on there, but it hasn't made its way over there yet.
Sure, I will let Superintendent Gwynn, if she's still on here.
I see her.
Okay, let her comment on the location, and I'll let Superintendent Foy talk about the accounting behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, a couple months back, discussed the starting with the Lakeview Center and Gilson Park property for the security cameras, and we have gone ahead and identified those locations, purchased the cameras. Half the cameras came in, half didn't, so it's just an ongoing project. And then we're scheduling in with West Park and the electrician, the buildings crews to install and run all the lines to set all the cameras. So it's can be a lengthy process, especially when you only get half the equipment in. So we are working on that ongoing.
Thanks.
And the voucher list is covering expenditures in August. The income statement and the capital expenditure reports for August have not been issued yet.
Okay.
So only July has been issued. You'll see it in next month's reporting.
Great. Thank you very much.
And I would also add, I mean, I think there's also a listing or an item for Galt Hamilton for irrigation, I believe, on the voucher list. You know, again, is that a park district expense, or is that a you know, going to be reimbursed by the village, because the village was doing that, was providing the irrigation?
Superintendent Foy, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so there, all of the expenditures are showing up on that voucher listing, but the amounts that are going to be reimbursed from the village are put to a receivable. So you won't see that run through the expenditure, the income statement for next month. So we are, if you, there's a GL number that ends in 1201, those amounts are going to be reimbursed to the
okay.
district.
Okay, thank you.
So it's the expectation is that not only hard costs or construction costs for these items will be paid, but also design or soft costs for these various projects. That's a valid expectation. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else, or should we take a roll call?
Okay.
Steve?
All right. Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch?
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
The voucher list is approved.
Excellent. Next item on the agenda is Executive Director Wilson's report.
Great, thank you. We had a couple of public input meetings for community playfields over the last couple of weeks, one on September 3rd at 10 a.m. in the morning, another on September 9th at 6 p.m. in the evening. At both meetings, we had approximately 15 members of the public attend. At both meetings, the overwhelming sentiment was that the amenities such as fitness pass, running water washrooms, landscape lighting, fitness equipment were not the items that the group assembled were interested in. There was interest and general support for participating in the development of a landscape plan moving forward for the park. And then the Parks and Recreation Committee had a robust discussion as well as public input that I'll let Commissioner Murdoch speak to. And then at this time of the year is when we get going on our budget process. So I outlined the general time frame within the memo where we'll be doing our individual committee reviews of sections of the budget within October's meetings. In November, we review the via a committee of the whole, the capital projects for 2021 and beyond. And in December, we review the full budget rolled up, and then we approve the tax levy in December and the budget and appropriations ordinance in January. So we will be reaching out to various committees, solidifying those October dates so we can then start working towards those deadlines internally as far as creation of the budget is concerned. Looking at your agendas moving forward in the meeting, the items on your agenda, under the Golf Committee report, there is a recommendation from the Golf Committee for consideration of the installation of the continuous cart pass system. It was deferred earlier in the year once the pandemic became apparent. As one of the projects we deferred, and now it's been reconsidered and will be for the board to consider again later. I will be walking us through a lot of information for that. Also, under financial planning, we did anticipate, per the committee's discussion, having the annual audit, better known as the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR, on the agenda. But unfortunately, our auditors did not return us a final version of that. And I spoke with President Anderson, and we felt that not until we have that in hand in front of everyone will that be approved. So anticipate that item coming back at the October board meeting. And then Lastly, a resolution under new business. You might recall approving a resolution once before for this parcel of land to be sold. It's the remaining small parcel between the Green Bay Trail and the Metro parking lot and the residences on Richmond Avenue. We had approved a sale to homeowners who lived at that address. They have subsequently sold their home to new homeowners who are interested in pursuing. So the resolution is an update representing the new homeowners. So that is the item under new business. And that concludes my report. And Commissioner Anderson, I do see Commissioner Murdoch's hand up.
All right, let him go.
Thanks. And we certainly could take care of this in the Parks and Rec report, but you did start your report talking about community playfields input. And one of the things we heard from a number of the folks who attended the Parks and Rec meeting was they felt like there was somehow a lack of transparency. And I just wanted to address that and then ask you a little bit about it. It's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we have discussed possible amenities at multiple Parks and Rec and board meetings. We sent out a survey. We had some community members indicate that they didn't feel that their views could be reflected in the survey, so we then sent out a revised survey. We've now had 2 meetings on site at the park. We discussed it at the Parks and Rec meeting today. And again, as of now, no decisions have been made. I guess my question for you is, are you aware of any park district plan or program outside of the stormwater plan or outside of activities down at the lakefront where we've ever sought this much community input and had this many meetings in your time here at the village? I'm trying to understand why there's a perception of a lack of transparency. I'm genuinely curious. I don't understand. I didn't know if you had any insight into that.
To answer your question directly, no, there aren't other times where we seek this much input, but I think we heard from the village tonight a lot of their efforts to reach out to nearby homeowners individually, and they did that around community playfields, and we didn't do the same. So I think for homeowners, that there is a difference in how we approached it as compared to the village, and I think that's what's driving their sentiments.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Commissioner Anderson?
Steve, I'd raise my hand. I think I'm not sure how robust our email list of addresses is. Because we had a lot of those local homeowners saying they didn't get the emails. And I'm assuming if we're basing it off of what we have in our system, and if they're not participating in any park district activities, maybe that's why they're getting left off the email list. That's all I can think of. But again, you guys know better than I do how robust your email is. And sometimes people get the emails and they don't remember them too. And that's always, part of the issue. But there was enough people there that it sounds like truly they aren't on our list.
Yes, I agree that there were too many people who have an interest who didn't receive the email. And that's why Superintendent Solberg and Superintendent Gwynn collected email addresses at the second input meeting, so we can make sure we can add people to our distribution list.
Is there a place on the website to opt in? Often people can opt in even if they aren't participants. And this may be something that could be highlighted. I'm sure there's something like that exists in the newsletter.
We have that on our website, but we can definitely try and make it more prominent for sure. Yes.
And I think in the thing we mailed to them, ask for both, if there's 2 spouses and, or somebody and a spouse, get both the email addresses. It doesn't hurt to have more than one person in the house get an email.
Great. Thank you. I see Commissioner Abbott's hand up as well.
Okay. A few questions. A couple scheduled. Well, community playfields. I did go just to listen to the community playfields. And as Steve said, there's a lot of neighbors there, and certainly opposition to most of the proposed amenities to the playfields. I did hear some softness with regard to some of these amenities, depending on the details of the designs. And we don't know the details of the designs. In other words, you know, there could be, from some of the neighbors, there could be agreeable solutions that could be worked out. And I just wanted to make that point. And Steve, does that sound?
Yes, I think I heard that maybe a little bit that night, but also tonight within the Parks and Rec Committee. I think I heard a continuation of that from a couple individuals, but I think I was trying to capture the overall sentiment for the larger group when I say that they weren't.
Sure. I just want to, well, thank you. I want to make that point. There are two schedule issues. The CAFR, so we're not in, I know we've been given an extended time in order to file this audit. We're okay?
We are okay.
Doing it in November.
Yes.
All right. And the same thing. Now we usually go through a budget process that, you know, we do it, I think, in January, and we have to pass it in January. And this could be a very challenging budget process, and I don't know how to speed it up. I just know that we're all going to be looking at very cloudy crystal balls in each of these committees. Are we held legally to the same schedule this year? There's not been any softening of that?
So at this point, there's been no indication of a softening of the requirements to file, especially the tax levy, which needs to be filed before the end of December.
Okay.
But if we are given such leeway, then obviously we can adjust our budget process accordingly.
I would say that our crystal balls are never going to get all that. You know, we're going to continue to go through this year and into next year, wishing we had a better sense of what will, you know, what just happened to us and what will happen to us next year. So I think all of the committees are going to, you know, we'll do the best we can. But there's been no indication of any extension. We really have to maintain our schedule at this point. Okay.
Yes.
Can I make a recommendation? We're sort of freewheeling here, that we get back on doing the committee reports and then ask the questions at the appropriate committee. Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Brian. Or
I was done. I'm done. Yes, let's go to the committee reports.
Okay, Lakefront.
Hello again. So we've had several meetings actually, because we had August's Lakefront meeting after last August's board meeting, and we had a committee of the whole meeting, and then we had another Lakefront meeting, and so people probably are tired of meetings. So there's a few things to update. With regard, a lot of the reasons for the extra meetings were soil erosion. You all know that. The consultants came back with recommendations, at least for short-term recommendations. There was considerable dialogue. I appreciate all of the commissioners being a part of that debate. And at the committee of the whole, we took their recommendations, but have largely decided to go with a more robust, our usual wintertime, I don't know what to call it, but we're going to put up snow fences. We're going to put up a lot of them, and we're just going to, water levels are dropping slowly, but they are dropping. And so we're rolling a little bit of the dice here, because we know that a lot of our buffer has been eliminated, although the beach has been growing a little bit at the end of the summer. So that was, that's an update through the committee of the whole meeting. We since then had a meeting last week, and we discussed going forward with regard to soil erosion and possible permanent solutions. Our consultant owes us one last round of recommendations, and these would impact sort of permanent solutions for our lakefront. And the question, I want to put this to the full board. The Lakefront Committee can take these questions and consider them and come back with recommendations, sort of the way we did it the last time. Or we could just hold a committee of the whole, because really we're going to get this one more round of discussions with the consultants. So certainly the committee stands ready to take their recommendations, ask all our questions, and maybe we'll end up with a committee of the whole meeting anyway, or we could just roll straight into a committee of the whole meeting. So that is my first question, and I'll come back to the other issues. Anybody want to comment on that? Would they like to be a part of this, or just let the Lakefront Committee handle it?
I see Commissioner Murdoch's hand up.
I would certainly like to be a part of it. I mean, how we deal with lakefront protection, what the cost is going to be, how effective it is certainly going to be a topic of conversation that we're all going to have to deal with. So as someone who's not on the committee, I'd love to be involved.
So when you say I'd like to be a part of it, you'd like to be able to question the consultants directly. Whether or not that comes in a second round or a first round, you certainly want your opportunities to talk to the consultant. Would that be accurate?
That's correct, Brian. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
I see Commissioner Wolf's hand up.
I guess I have a different view. I feel like the Lakefront Committee could handle the diving into the details and getting all the specific questions asked, and then coming back and making a recommendation to the board where we can ask you questions further from there. I feel like our last committee, the whole meeting was really productive. However, I feel that we've kind of come to some sort of consensus. So.
Okay.
I see Commissioner Anderson's hand up.
President Anderson?
President Anderson?
I think I'm going to weigh in on the side of Commissioner Murdoch here. And this is such a big issue for the whole board, not just the Lakefront Committee, that, I think it'll move the thing along faster if we all have opportunities to be involved along the way, rather than wait for meeting to meeting to meeting. I appreciate where Commissioner Wolf is coming from. I understand the logic of what she said. I just happen to, there's benefits both ways, and I would lean toward being more involved at a board level rather than just letting the committee do everything.
That really leaves Commissioner Goebel, because
yeah, I've certainly felt that we had a robust discussion in the most recent committee of the whole meeting. I think that our views were well represented. In fact, I might ask the Lakefront Committee to be sure that they're reflecting on those views from the last meeting when they consider this in the future. But I am confident that between the talent on the Lakefront Committee plus President Anderson, I think that we have everybody there that we need. Commissioner Murdoch as well. I don't know that I feel I need to add my views and that they are going to be materially different.
So am I hearing that we should just go into a committee of the whole meeting with the consultants and ask the questions and, go home and think about them and then come back as a board to, I don't know that we would be voting that night, but a committee that we can't, it's a committee of the whole meeting. Is that what I'm hearing? I think.
So Mr. Schisler has his hand up as well.
Sure.
I think that I'm really for meeting with the committee at the whole as well. It seems much more efficient instead of being kicked back and forth, especially if we're going to be spending significant funds, which I think there's a chance. And so I would definitely be in favor of that.
I think that's what, okay.
All right. So if it's okay, tomorrow morning, I'll try and get a couple available evenings from the consultants, and we will see how that fits with the commissioner's schedule. And obviously, if not everyone can be there, as long as we have 4, we can still have the meeting.
Thank you all for paying so much attention to this issue and listening in and then asking the questions. It has the potential for a budget buster, and but we all care about that park, and I appreciate everybody's putting their time and energies into it. So that's soil erosion. Master plan, staff is still, we're setting up community input meetings. The plan here is to have a board community, well, let's just call it a board input meeting. Obviously with our board there, it would be an open meeting, but primarily it's to solicit the board's input. So there's another meeting that you can look forward to. In addition to that, there will be primarily community input meetings where the board is asked, you can certainly attend, but asked to allow the community to express their views, and we should just listen to our community. So it's kind of a two-phase, but we don't have any dates, and I know that Director Wilson will be contacting us about that. We are kind of wrapping up our summer operations. A large measure of gratitude goes out to the staff. The community certainly asked us to get the lakefront open. The staff managed to do that. It's been a tough year on them. We have worked at trying to maintain access down at the lakefront all summer long. Certainly sailing, there's been a lot of successes. There's been some tragedy. But there's certainly been an amazing effort put forth by the staff, and the community thanks them. But speaking of access, there was an email, and it was referenced earlier. We do have the fence up. The fence, I believe, the intention is that it should remain up as long as we are staffed in this month. There's a gate at the south end. It has been locked up until 4 o'clock in the afternoon on weekdays. And I would like to see this gate opened. I didn't want the fence to block access for walkers to the lake. And we've asked for a balance down there. And this is, I'm throwing this out to the board. Steve, I know that, maybe you want to weigh in on what are the possibilities here. Would you like to say anything at this point?
Sure. Yes, as we conveyed to the Lakefront Committee, obviously we're going to keep it closed until we had staff on site. We've talked about how without staff, the fence doesn't achieve a whole lot other than making it less convenient to access the beach for people trying to walk the beach. And so with that being said, now that school has begun, now that weather is starting to be less hot, we are willing to entertain the idea of opening the gates early in the morning using our park staff and not our lakefront staff, and then our lakefront staff would close it up later in the day when they conclude their shifts. So we're willing to work however the board directs us, and obviously if we also could remove the fence completely. That's an option. That's an opportunity. But just know that if we do that, to put it back in is not going to happen. So opening the gates, monitoring the situation, and if need be, because of overcrowding, having the ability to reclose the gates, that might be the best course of action until the weather turns to a point where overcrowding is not a consideration anymore.
Well, I've not wanted to micromanage the staff down there in any way, but this is an issue of access. Does anybody wish to comment on this?
Just out of curiosity, is the gate the only access? Because at one point, there was 2 or 3 gates, not just the one on the southernmost beach. Is that part of the beach?
There are 2 gates within the temporary fence. One down by the dog beach, one closer to the southern end of the swimming beach. And that gate was there for access to the swimming beach, more so than the access to sailing beach. But both gates in theory could be opened if that's the direction we want to go.
But in theory, though, people's access to the beach, if they wanted to go on a stroll, is still not limited. They could just go to a different gate and enter through that other gate. Is that correct?
Not when both gates are locked, no. But if you were to open only one, then yes.
Okay. I thought they still had access and people still went through the swimming beach saying, hey, I'm just going on a stroll or this.
Well, yes, I'm sorry. If someone approaches the swimming beach looking to walk the lakefront, yes, we let them walk all the way down and back. Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I thought you were talking about access through a portion of
No, but my point is people can still get to the beach. They can still walk on the beach, even if they don't go through their gate of choice, they aren't completely prohibited from accessing the beach.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I will comment on that, because once staff hours set up, the swim beach is not the walking entrance. It is the pass only entrance. And that distinction can be lost on people. It's like, oh, if I'm a walker, now at 4:30, I have to go to the South Beach in order to walk in, but I can only walk in before 4:30 at the swim beach. Yes, you're right. You are correct, Todd, there is, but their mindset, people who want to walk, they have to understand what they have to do.
Oh, and I get that. I just don't want to spend money that's not necessary and still perhaps get the same effect.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to hear from you, and I'm sorry if I sounded argumentative.
No.
But okay.
I see a couple commissioners with their hands up. We're just going to go around the horn here. Commissioner Murdoch.
I'd just like to pick up on what Brian had said. I think that for people who are coming in by the harbor, they walk down that road by the Coast Guard station. It'd be nice to be able to go in at that point and then walk around. And obviously, I was probably one of the strongest proponents of putting a fence up because it seemed that there was some serious overcrowding. And I do recognize that if there's a crowd in place already, who the folks aren't following our rules, it's difficult to kind of move those people out once they're in or get them to comply with the rules. That being said, with the current weather being what it is, I assume that will be less of a problem here moving forward. And I would like to see access as long as we're not putting staff at risk or creating serious problems. So barring any problems, I'd love to see the gate open for the time being until we experience those problems.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Clark?
Yes, well, nice. Yes, in fact, I texted Steve basically that earlier today. Although I will also point out, when I went down to the lake, there were people walking the beach beyond the fence. So people are figuring out that they can walk that and enter through the swim beach or the sailing beach and walk, because there were people there. There were people swimming in the water. But I kind of agree. I mean, I think it is supposed to be much warmer tomorrow, but just generally, if you look, the longer view is that the weather is not what it was, 2 weeks ago, even, and that it's definitely much cooler. So I would think that we could open the gates as well. So.
Thank you.
President Anderson. You need to unmute yourself.
I would like us to consider just taking the fence down completely at this point. I mean, if we open up the gates, then what's the point of having the fence? And, if we're not, I don't know if we're still worried about, young adults or teens getting together at night after we would otherwise have closed things off. At this time of year, I don't know if that's as big an issue as it was over the summer. I think at this point, the benefits of having just an open beach again, recognizing that there's a couple 3 days next week in the middle of the week that are going to be 76 degrees. So those are nice days, but that's as good as it's going to get. I think at this point, as far as I'm concerned, I think the fence has served its purpose. We did the right thing. I wouldn't change anything we did, but I don't think we need it at this point.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Schisler has his hand up again.
Just curious, from you, Director Wilson, do you see that the fence could still, provide a benefit? What's the crowd levels? I mean, obviously, each of the commissioners isn't at the beach on a daily basis. I think it definitely served its purpose very, very well. But do you think that need still exists? And just based on your experience?
Sure, and maybe I'm not the best person to answer this either, because I'm not down at the beach as well, but the beach staff probably is. And what we're hearing from them is that The overcrowding isn't an issue right now, but that's also with a fence with locked gates until staff is there. And so, you know, you take down the fence. Yes, it's cooler temperatures right now. You don't know what any given day on a weekend or a weekday could give you weather-wise. You know, you could find yourself in a position of overcrowding where you don't have a fence, you don't have control points, and you almost can't manage it. You won't be able to break up any groups, and that's fine. That's an option. That is not something that is completely unfamiliar to us in prior years. We've had similar situations, so we can try and continue to manage it with the staff that we do have, which are not many. And if we take down the fence, we will reduce our staff even further because we are staffing checkpoints. We would probably just end this extended season concept, but that's a level of conversation we need to continue to have. So could the fence provide a benefit? Yes, if the circumstances come together in a way where there's a hot day and there are crowds and we want to keep people distant from each other and keep certain activities under control. But I think to kind of Commissioner Anderson's point, and I think Commissioner Clark's point, is that the weather is waning at this time of the year. And while we've had some hot September weekend days in the recent past, which has informed largely why we talked with the Lakefront Committee about extending operations through at least the end of September, you know, we don't have to do that. That was the plan a month ago. It doesn't necessarily, or maybe a week ago, I can't even remember our meetings anymore. But it doesn't have to be the way we continue. Commissioner Clark, I see your hand up.
Yeah, because I was also going to just make the point, you know, just unlocking the gates, but keeping the fence up also creates that sort of psychological aspect that it's still, even though people have access, you know, to try to deter large groups from coming on, and just, you know, having the fence there does also, you know, cause that kind of a psychological deterrence that it's not approved that they should be collecting there in, you know, in large groups. And so, I mean, I guess I'm leaning toward leaving the fence and just unlocking it and just seeing where it goes from there. Because then if by any chance, maybe if it was a very hot day, we could keep it locked. We don't necessarily have to open it every day. If it's a very, you know, looks like it's going to be a very hot day and we don't have the staff, we could always keep the gates locked too. So anyway, that for at least for a little bit longer, maybe another week, maybe 2 weeks, perhaps may keep the fence, but, you know, keep the gates open.
I see Commissioner Goebel's hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Recognizing that the weather is, you know, changing, I think that leaving it another 2 weeks and reevaluating gives us a no regrets type of action plan. I also would be curious to know how long it takes to make a decision, say in a forum like this, and then take it down. Is that a couple of days notice? Is that a turnaround in 24 hours type of situation? Just curious on how quickly a change would need to be made in the event we even decided to make a change.
Sure, and I'll let Superintendent Solberg comment on this, but really, you know, the fence is a fence from a fencing company. It's not fencing we own, so it's partially going to be dependent on their schedule and their availability. I don't know if they would afford us the opportunity to remove the panels on our own or not, or, you know, if that becomes a liability issue of some sort. But Superintendent Solberg, any more to add to that?
No, I would agree that we would have to get on his schedule, which could be in the next couple of days if we were to make a decision this evening or tomorrow or sometime this week.
We also discussed at the Lakefront meeting and scheduling to take it down after the close of this extension, which is again September 27th. So it's about a week, like not even 10 days. So just keep that in mind as well, that we're coming, oh, thank you for the clarification, 13 days. And we're looking, we can maybe get on the schedule and take it down then at that point, which wouldn't then necessarily need a full meeting, so to speak. So just keep that in mind.
At this point, leaving it a short 13 days more, recognizing we always do have those few hot days, seems like an easy choice, and also acknowledges that none of us see it as a permanent fence that will be staying much longer than the month.
Anybody else?
I see Commissioner Schisler's hand back up.
You know what, I really liked Cicely, her points, and I think those are kind of my sentiments as well, because we still have the tool available to us if we need it. And that's the whole point of even having the fence in the first place, is a tool that we can utilize if we need it. So I would definitely be in favor of keeping it up, but possibly opening the gates, you know, as needed as well, just like she was said.
Okay, great. So let me just summarize and make sure that I'm hearing the input correctly. The plan would be using Parks Department staff, early morning opening of the gates approximately in the 6:30 timeframe, and then at the end of a day using Lakefront Division staff to close it back up.
Leaving the fence up for now until the end of the staffing period, which is 2 weeks away. I concur with that, and I think that's a wise. We're reaching that balance point. I mean, everybody's got a slightly different place, and we all have to be willing to be a little bit wrong here, but we're quickly reaching that balance point. I think I heard by and large, leave the fence up for 2 weeks, open the gate, and try to bring it down as quickly as possible, hopefully at the end of this 2 weeks.
Well, tomorrow with the weather is supposed to be about 80 tomorrow. It might give us some idea of whether having a fence is still a good idea. I mean, we have the gates open, we'll see how many people show up and what.
It's certainly been a fluid summer, and we've tried to rise to, well, the staff has tried to rise to the occasions. I appreciate everybody's input and taking the time and weighing in on this. I think this is an issue worthy of the board's consideration. It is a public access to the lakefront issue. Thank you. I know I asked these detailed questions, but thank you all. Finishing up the report.
Brian, before you continue, Commissioner Anderson put his hand back up while I was.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, just a quick comment. As long as we're opening at 6:30, I think that's great. That was the question I was going to ask, and you answered it for me after I put my hand up. But that allows people who like to get up early and get down there knowledge that they can walk that beach, which is wonderful.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you all. I believe that wraps up my long report, and thank you again for your input.
All right, thank you. We got Parks and Rec, Commissioner Murdoch.
All right, Parks and Rec met earlier this evening, and we spent most of the time discussing the community playfields. Prior to that, we did receive some input about mask wearing at hockey games, and the staff has revised the plan slightly so that players have a couple of different options. I thought that was positive. We received some feedback, very positive feedback about the public lap swimming, and some folks had asked whether we'd be able to continue a reservation system next year. Obviously, that has the potential to create some challenges because it was a pay-per-use system this year, whereas in most years people buy passes and then have unlimited access, or they buy a daily pass. But nevertheless, staff did say they were going to take a look at it. Maybe there's some sort of a hybrid that's possible, but we'll look at that for next season. We had a few folks reach out about the K Nature Center. The northern access at the back of the park historically has been locked, and a number of the neighbors had asked if it could be opened. The current gate is not ideal for pedestrian traffic, so we're going to have to rework that a little bit, but we're going to get that access open sometime here in the next week or two. There's a lot of folks from the neighborhood who would like to be able to walk through the park. It's a beautiful park, but it's really only accessible off of Hibbard by Skokie, which tends to be very busy. So I saw that as a real positive development. We did not get to a summer camp summary. We did not get to managers' reports because the majority of the meeting was public comment concerning community playfields and possible amenities. So we heard from a lot of folks, weighed in about what they would like to see or not see. Generally, most of the folks who spoke were immediately surrounding the park. And in general, we heard that they would like to see fewer as opposed to more amenities. But we also did hear from staff reviewing the the survey that went out. We had two versions of the survey. One went to, we had 620 responses, and then the revised survey, we had 140 responses. And in those responses, generally, probably perhaps came from a group a little bit further away throughout the community. We tended to see more widespread support for the different amenities. And so what we asked staff to do at the very end of the meeting, didn't have much time for the commissioners to discuss, but again, love to hear from the entire board if anybody wants to weigh in. We basically asked staff to give us additional information about what these amenities would look like. For example, washrooms, where we might place those washrooms, and come back to the committee next month with 2 or 3 or 4 possible locations that could be discussed, and the fitness path, what materials it would be, where it would be located, and so on. So where we left things was the staff was going to give us additional information that we could then get additional community input. We could discuss with the rest of the commissioners and then see where we go from there. I would note that given that we were unable to cover everything on the agenda, I highly doubt we will hold this meeting next month before the board meeting. And so given that, because the time will be different, I would ask staff to reach out to those folks who have provided email addresses, who have indicated an interest level, let them know when the meeting is going to be so they can attend the meeting, so they can offer any comments, so they can hear what staff provides to us. And that is my report, unless folks have any questions or comments. All right, thank you.
All right, golf committee.
Thank you. The golf committee met on August 24th. The conditions at the course are very good. The color and density of the grass is very good. The staff over there is implemented a fairway and sand top dressing program, which includes divot recovery and getting better grass growth so that you can get back to playing more quickly. They're watering the course a lot since we haven't had much rain until this past week. And up to that point of our meeting, they'd been able to use well water on site, which has been really great. They're fixing any spots on the fairways. They're resodding them and fixing potholes that are there to make the course also better. And then they're also venting the greens with pencil-sized holes to allow air and water to penetrate those to give them a thicker build up there. Another area we discussed at the meeting was financials. Golf has been very busy. In the month of July, we had over 8,500 rounds, around 276 rounds a day. So we have been at capacity there. There's only been one day in July that we could not rent carts. In August, we've had around the same percentage of usage. The driving range has been very busy, and our daily fees have been up as well there. On the supply side over there, the invoices are still catching up to things that we had ordered earlier in the season. One of the things that we had a hard time getting was golf balls. We were out of golf balls for a while. And I think that's just been to some supply issues with COVID, but I believe they've gotten those back in, so that's been good. And then finally, we discussed the golf cart continuous path project. And we discussed how that would work, what that would look like, but specifically how it could be financed moving forward so that it does not come out of our capital reserves. We looked at 2 different options. One of them being a debt extension, which we already have, but that doesn't give us very much leeway moving forward. It can limit some of our future borrowing. The other one we discussed was operating debt, which seemed to have a much stronger bent toward this project. There's no levy with it, and we would use operational revenue to pay down that debt, the debt of the loan moving forward. Typically, the operating debt loans are paid back in about a 10-year period, according to our financial advisors. The interest rate's slightly higher on that compared to the debt extension option. However, it doesn't come out to anything, I mean, it's significant, but not extremely significant that it could be impactful of the loan. Superintendent Foy let us know that our projections overall in other areas are coming in low with registrations and things to the point at the point where we had this meeting. I'm sure she has an update that she could give us now to see where we are so that we can make sure that we're considering this project in conjunction with other capital projects and our operating and other expenses that are going on. In the end, we voted on this issue in the committee and 2 voted in favor and 1 voted against. So we are bringing it to the board now to have a discussion with everyone here and to take a vote about possibly moving this project forward now or in the future. So that's my golf report.
I see Commissioner Anderson's hand up.
Well, hello. One of the things that I heard along the way was that we had asked them to come back to us with a 20-year option that would then reduce the annual payments significantly, obviously close to half of what they are for the 10-year. Is that right? And did they come back with something, or is that not practical? Didn't know if that's on the table.
So I believe the discussion at the committee level was to look at, and let's just real quickly set terminology. You're going to hear interchange terminology because it's all changing around this debt. So debt certificates is what I used to call them. They used to be called revenue bonds. Now in this presentation that the golf committee looked at, they were called operational debt. Basically what that means is it's debt paid out of operational revenue, not out of tax levy funds. So this sort of debt doesn't impact the tax levy, but it does impact the way operational surpluses are allocated. So when the discussion was, could the operational debt or debt certificates be structured in a way where the annual payments were in the $55,000 range? And the answer to that is yes, we have some flexibility in the way repayment is structured. I do have a slide here that could illustrate that, and you're correct, Commissioner Anderson, that does come to about a 20-year payback period.
Okay.
If I'm wrong, the interest rate is higher on that when it's spread out over 20 years versus 10.
Correct. With any sort of debt issuance, the further out you go out in time, the risk increases as you're to the debt holders and your ability to repay it. So the interest rate does increase over if it's a longer repayment period as compared to a shorter repayment period.
Do you have any kind of amount on what that additional interest would be? I know looking at the debt extension versus the operational debt, it was a variance of about $70,000.
Yes. So I think I'm sharing my screen now, and you all should be able to see this presentation. So this is the same presentation that the golf committee reviewed with the addition of that new concept. And so as I page through this, so this is operating debt over a 10-year time frame, and you can see that to issue $850,000, the repayment is $971,900, as compared to the 20-year option, and it becomes $1,065,558. And that is, again, driven by the different interest rate over a longer period of time.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'd like to open it up to other commissioners for discussion and thoughts on the continuance or questions about the continuance of the cart path and financing options. Obviously, if we did proceed with this project, it would be turned over to the Finance Committee for them to weigh in on finance options as well. It's not something that would be made in a vacuum.
With that being the case, if you looked at our financial, our income, would you feel comfortable with the 10-year or the shorter time frame, Director Wilson?
Yes, I'm comfortable with both options.
Okay. So you wouldn't think that we're overextending ourselves or anything like this based on, okay, perfect.
Commissioner Murdoch, I see your hand up.
Unmute, I apologize. So a couple of questions, because obviously we're living in challenging times. I think all of us are concerned about making sure that we maintain adequate cash on hand, adequate reserves. We want to make sure that we don't encumber our borrowing power. We use the debt extension base because we obviously have other needs for the district that are unknown. With respect to this project, it's my personal belief that you generally don't use operating debt, debt certificates, revenue bonds, whatever you want to call them, unless you're creating a new source of revenue. So for me, the key question here is the probability, the likelihood of us creating new revenue and how much revenue that might be. So for me, it would be very helpful if Steve, you could walk us through how you looked at this project, what new revenue you expect to be created, your degree of confidence in that. And then I think based on that, we can take a look at how we might structure debt to fund this project that wouldn't impact other operations, or might actually, if we are able to structure it in such a way, create additional resources for the rest of the district. If you could do that, I would appreciate it.
Sure. As we did at the golf committee, this is a kind of a break-even analysis, if you will, of that was originally created for the November 5th, 2019 golf committee meeting, where we looked at ourselves as well as some of our nearby competitive golf facilities. And as we move left to right here, when you get to Sunset Valley and Highland Park and continue to the right, these 4 courses actually have continuous cart paths. These 3 courses do not. Sportsman's is in the middle of a renovation, whereas a part of their renovation, they will be installing continuous cart paths. Winnetka, in conversation last week, told me that they are also installing continuous cart paths in the near future, probably come next year. I don't believe Glencoe has any plans to do it at this point. Once we looked across all of these courses, trying to find a course that operates similar to us, similar quality, trying to make sure that we're trying to get as close to a proxy for our course so we could do a comparison, we settled on Glenview, partially because it was renovated a year after us. It's a walkable course similar to Wilmette as compared to a Mount Prospect that has a lot more terrain to it, so it's not as walkable as Wilmette and Glenview are. So what we did was we focused on us compared to Glenview, and then this page, really what it does is compare the days closed for both facilities, days without carts for both facilities, the number of rounds that each course was doing, as well as the year-end projected numbers, as including pricing and quantity for the revenue generated from cart rentals. Then down here, we started employing some of our metrics as far as pricing is concerned. Took 50% of this variance up here to calculate this number, again, our pricing, and 50% of this variance here to calculate this number to arrive at about $115,000 in what we believe will be additional revenue if we had a continuous cart path plan. This analysis is one that I've been asked multiple times if I'd want to change. I don't, but at the same time, I need to make it clear that this analysis, nor any analysis, is perfect, because it's oversimplifying a somewhat complex concept, which is Mother Nature and its impact on golf, and the day of the week and the time of the day and the way the rain falls and when it falls. There's a lot of nuance to this and how it could impact any of it. But this is the analysis we did, the analysis that I still believe in. And to Commissioner Schisler's question about a 10-year payback versus a 20-year payback, the 10-year payback's in the 90,000 range, which is why I feel okay with both approaches.
So if I could just sort of follow up on some of that. So we understand your analysis. You basically took a look at Glenview, which is a similar course to ours, and you did not expect to match their performance in terms of number of rounds and carts, you actually cut that in half. So there's going to be a lot of talk about your level of confidence in that $115,000 in potential new revenue, but it's certainly possible that it could be higher than $115,000 if we were to perform closer to Glenview. Also, just to clarify, in terms of your assumptions, you assume the average revenue per round was $21, and we do substantially better than that on average now. Is that correct?
This year, yes. This year is somewhat of a unique outlier year for the golf industry in the Chicagoland area and maybe even nationally. But this year we are charging higher rates. We're getting more prepaid golf, less member-based golf, things like that. So the number is higher for 2020 for sure.
Right, but so this year I think we're close to $30 a round, but even last year we averaged nearly $27 a round, and the year before over $24 a round. So all of those are substantially higher than the $21 assumption you made, right?
All three of those numbers are higher, yes.
Right. And the cart rental fee that you assumed was $19, even though we're charging $21 this year.
Correct.
I just want to make sure I've got all my numbers right. So again, we're going to talk about the potential revenue. This $115,000, it could be higher than that. Of course, it could be lower based on circumstances, but it could be higher as well.
Yes, again, we cut it in half to try and be conservative, but it may not be conservative enough, or it might be overly conservative. So yes, both outcomes are possible in any given year.
And last thing, and then I'll let other folks kind of weigh in, but the 20-year bond would only require about a $55,000 payout. So in those situations, if we generated more than 55,000, any of those funds would then go to the general coffers. Is that right?
Correct.
So it could actually create additional revenues for us. And I think the obvious is stated, whatever the revenue is, whether it's 40 or 60 or 115 or more, if we don't do the cart pass, we don't expect to have that revenue next year. So if and when we do this project at some point in the future, the effective cost to the district, because we've lost that revenue for the next season, would effectively be higher. And that's all I have to say.
All right, I see a couple other commissioner hands up. Commissioner Anderson?
I'll tell you, why don't you let other people go before I go?
Okay. Commissioner Schisler?
So am I hearing you correctly in that if, as far as a staff recommendation, that this would be a good idea? And secondly, is there any concern over the optics of doing this under the pandemic, or is this a much safer way to proceed?
So 2 questions there. I'll answer them separately. Yes, my recommendation at this point, given the operational debt option, not taking away the ability to levy other debt to handle other projects, also not paying for it out of reserves, reducing the park district's financial conditions, again, providing flexibility for other projects moving forward. I do think that this is a project that should be pursued sooner than later, and I would, if making the sole decision, pursue it quickly so it could be completed before the golf season gets fully underway come next year. And then as far as optics are concerned, I think that's something that is probably best suited for all of the commissioners to determine what their optics are for them. But I know that I have specifically in conversations with commissioners spoken about my concern about optics on capital projects when we are looking at cuts to staff and people losing their jobs. And I really have struggled with not only making those decisions, but also struggled with making this decision with that as a backdrop. And I think ultimately when I look at some of the decisions that we made regarding staffing levels and the financial impact those have to the bottom line, and then I compare that to the financial impact that this project could have to our bottom line, they're similar, and possibly the impact of this project could be greater to the bottom line. So I do believe that despite that internal conflict of mine, this is still a project that is in the best interest of the agency.
And so ultimately what I'm hearing you say is it could lead to us being in an overall healthier financial state by doing it, and more secure financial state.
That is the point of view in which I'm operating from, yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes, I guess, well, one question I had kind of, you kind of answered as part, how long will it take to install the cart paths, and could that installation, cut back on playing on golf games and golf rounds, but I think you've said you're trying to get it done as soon as possible, so it doesn't impact it. So that answers that question. And I guess, if another thing, I guess I'm thinking that if Winnetka is now also in the process of installing such a path, I mean, could we potentially lose additional rounds to a course that has a path? And, so that our revenue would fall. If this wasn't done, would our revenue fall even further? And that's kind of, and then one last question I have is, what if we don't generate the revenue? I mean, how do we pay back those bonds if, say, we don't generate the revenue that's predicted? Where would that money come from?
Great. So the two questions, I'll try and remember them both and take them in order. With Winnetka adding a path, yes, it becomes another close by course that has it. So for the golfer who needs a cart and wants to play on a day where we otherwise wouldn't have a cart path, then Winnetka becomes an option for them. That's close by for them, but currently existing close by is Glenview. A little bit further out is Deerfield and Mount Prospect and Highland Park. So they are definitely something to be considered, but I don't know if it necessarily moves the needle significantly compared to the rest of the industry directly around us, but it is a very close by course, so it does become a factor. And I've already blinked on your second question. I'm sorry.
I was question if the revenue, where
got it. Yes.
It doesn't. There's not enough revenue to pay the bonds. Where do we pay that?
Sure. Again, it comes out of the park district's operating revenue. So if it isn't specifically golf generated revenue, it becomes kind of an obligation of the district's operations overall. Similarly, we've done these debt certificates or operational debt in the past, and we've had circumstances where the funding mechanism fell short of repaying the debt in certain years, and it does become paid for. We don't ever default, but it becomes paid for out of the remaining operations.
Okay.
Commissioner Abbott?
Yeah, thank you. Let's see. So I believe the golf course was picked up by the community over 40 years ago, 1970s, right? It was a referendum.
1972 by referendum.
Right. Exactly. So clearly the community decided to get into the golf business. I'm good with that. There was a vote and the community wants to do that. I'm behind it. I think we're in the golf business. I think the committee's done a good job of at least coming up with the proper payment process. I would not favor debt extension, and nor would I take this out of reserves especially. So the idea of trying to pay this debt off using revenues, that at least is the proper way of doing it. I must say, though, I'm not in an expansive mood with regard to money-making ideas. We're deferring $2 million worth of capital expenditures this year. We've got a lot of uncertainty going forward. We've got perhaps some lakefront projects that probably do deserve our attention, not that this doesn't. We've also I've seen, at least in my 8 years, that golf revenues are not quite as predictably elastic as we like to think. I wasn't here when we built the clubhouse. I know that we incurred some debt for that. It was here when we did the course. It didn't quite generate the business that we thought. So I'm not arguing like, well, we should get out of the golf business, but we've seen sort of disappointments. I know that the board really wants to make golf pay. Like this is somehow or another some tow-headed stepchild that we need to get it up there and paying for itself. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the board, you know, this is a positive thing. We want golf to be pulling its own weight. I've got to say, I want to wait. I want to wait for let this dust settle a little bit financially, and that we pull together these lakefront numbers that which we should be getting soon, and we pull together these golf numbers, which again, I believe that the golf committee has made an argument. We put these into a comprehensive plan going forward. I'm not prepared to vote yes at this point without some, you know, further information. So I'm not for this at all, but I can't vote for it this year. The optics, yeah, it's kind of hard for me to get my head around the optics. And so that's where I'm going to go. But God bless you all for however you come down on this opinion. So I'm done.
Great. I see Commissioner Schisler's hand up again.
One of the example courses that you used was Glenview, and they had, you know, more rounds typically when you did the analysis last year. And would you think that, and this is a multi-part question, by the way, would you think that one of the reasons why they do have more rounds is because they do have continuous paths?
That's part of my consideration in that analysis, yes.
Okay. And here we just had even a light rainy weekend. Did that affect us?
Yes, we were without carts for a portion of the weekend, impacting us to the tune of about $10,000 for the weekend.
Okay, so I mean, geez, one weekend, and this has been a dry year. I think there was 58 days last year that we weren't able to use carts. So, I mean, that's pretty significant. So, is that accurate?
I believe the analysis had 57 days.
57. Okay. Okay. Perfect.
Steve, where did you get the 10,000 from?
That was from Adam running some reports comparing it. We had a outing on Friday that was impacted. We had cancellations throughout the weekend. When he sent me that information, I then hopped into our system and started running weekend revenue from July 10th, I want to say, all the way through this past weekend. And those weekend numbers were in the $22 all the way up to $35,000 range in any given weekend. And this past weekend, our revenue was $10,000.
Okay, but that was not because of cart path issues. My recollection is only Sunday the cart paths weren't open.
We did not have carts on Friday. And when we talk weekends, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the golf industry.
Okay, but we didn't lose $10,000 because we didn't have a cart path.
We lost $10,000 in general. Cart pass played a role in that, and that's again why this analysis is very difficult, because there's a lot of layers and nuances to it. But yes, you're correct that it isn't exclusively cart path driven. There was weather factors to also be considered.
Yeah, well, okay, that's a very big distinction to make.
Yep.
Anybody else?
I see no one else with their hand up.
Okay, well, let me kind of back up a little bit here. As you know, when you first presented your presentation at, I don't know if it's the golf committee or whatever, years ago or a year ago, I had a great level of discomfort making the assumption that, you know, Glenview was a sort of the perfect match for us. So my approach was to look at our course and look at our numbers and then get the assumptions from Adam as to what, in fact, his take on things were. And just to make a long story short, the biggest difference between your model and my model at the end of the day is the fact that when I asked Adam, if we don't have cart pass, how many people won't play because of that? And he said 25% for my model, but the assumption you've got in your model is 50%. And so that in and of itself drives basically your number to be twice as big as my number. So you know, the 110 or whatever the number is, I've got something in the 40 to 50 range. So that really, to me, is where the difference is. I don't believe we're going to get an extra $100,000 a year of golf cart revenue or of course revenue just because we put in a cart path. However, I am a proponent of doing the cart path. I wouldn't do it now unless the revenues we get in a year are close to or you know, more than what our debt payments would be. So for me, we can't let we have to talk about the financing of it. And I'm comfortable because I know, you know, this is a good compromise, I think. If we do it over 20 years, the payments each year are probably going to be close. And therefore, we would not end up spending more money next year and the year after than we're taking in. If we take it out 20 years, and yes, the time value of money, yes, the additional risk, there's a little bit more interest, but at the end of the day, I feel much more comfortable supporting this soon if we know our payments are in the $50,000 to $55,000 range, not in the $90,000 or $95,000 range, because we will be spending more on debt payments than we will be taking in on the revenue, in my very humble opinion. So I would say if we're going to do it at 10 years, I'd say I wouldn't support it. I don't think we got the revenue to cover it, and it's taken away from other stuff, and especially this year and next year where we're running deficits, we can't afford to do that. At the same time, if we do it over 20 years, I think we're okay. So that I would be in support of it if we did it over the 20-year plan. And it'd be even better if we don't make the first payment until 2022, because we're going to have a deficit again next year.
Great, thank you. I see a couple hands up. Commissioner Wolf.
Thanks. I was just doing some rough calculations based on the presentation that Mr. Wilson gave us. So looking at the interest rates for the 10-year, it looks like it's around 7.8% if we do the operational debt, but over 20 years, it jumps to 18%. I mean, it's a fairly significant jump in interest rates when you do spread it out over 20 years. So I just want people to be aware of that extra money. I mean, we're looking at a big chunk of money on the initial investment that we'd have to be paying back. So,
Amy, just for clarification, those aren't interest rates.
That's sorry, not rates. That's the percentage of the overall project.
That goes to interest.
That goes to interest. Sorry, I'm sorry. Not the. I didn't phrase it properly. Exactly. Sorry. Yeah. So it's a pretty big chunk of money when we're looking at it, in my opinion. I have to say that I agree with Commissioner Abbott that I am fully in favor of this project. However, I don't think that the timing is right now to be putting out, if we do it over 20 years, over $1 million in expenses for a cart path project that could wait another year. And I get Commissioner Murdoch's point that we would be losing additional revenue next year. But I feel at the same time, we didn't have it this year. So we lost, I mean, we haven't had it ever. So it's not like you can say all of a sudden we're going to lose money because we've never had it. So I understand that there would be additional revenue coming in. My concern is just that I just don't think with everything going on, it's the right time to spend over $1 million on this right now.
Great. Commissioner Murdoch?
Picking up on Gordon's comment, I think given the world that we live in and the likelihood that next year will still be a challenging year, I think there's tremendous merit in structuring the debt so that we defer the first payment until the following year. In that scenario, we're guaranteed that we will generate whatever revenue we generate will go straight to the bottom line when we need it most. Gordon, I think that was a great suggestion and I would strongly support it. Going back to Amy's comment, yes, the longer we pay it out, the more interest we pay. It's over a longer term and it's a higher rate. But again, if you take a look at the difference between the 10-year and the 20-year, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, it's entirely possible that that difference will be entirely made up and then some on just the revenue that we generate next year that we otherwise wouldn't have. So I think the notion that we would extend these payments out so we have an extremely high probability that it won't ever negatively impact operations, and we guarantee that next year it will positively impact operations by not making any payments next year, I think makes this a no-brainer in my opinion.
And I just did a quick calculation. The difference between the 10-year and the 20-year in total cost is $93,658. Commissioner Schisler, I believe your hand was next.
I'm kind of curious, and other people weigh in as well, but my understanding is that right now construction companies are kind of being a lot more competitive, and my worry is that if we wait, that we could actually end up paying more for the project. And so any savings that we might have had would go out the window, and so it might be a wash as far as the difference between a 10 and a 20-year difference as far as what we're paying out for it.
Thank you. Commissioner Goebel?
Yes, Steve, you mentioned a few minutes ago that we've used this type of operating debt in other projects. For background for the board, could you share a few of those projects?
Sure. In my tenure with the district, I can remember two off the top of my head. The first was about $1 million issuance, I believe in the 2009 timeframe. That was to redo the parking lot at the Community Recreation Center. And then the other instance was when we renovated the golf course. The board and the committee at the time wanted to have a portion of the project allocated to golf enhancements versus infrastructure sort of work. And so they allocated a percentage of the project to the golf enhancements and issued this type of debt for that, and then created a $3 per round surcharge to accumulate the revenue to repay that. Unfortunately, the quality of the course was pretty poor coming out of the renovation, and we didn't generate those rounds in many of the years. So we fell short and used the revenues from the rest of the district to make those payments.
It's not unusual in golf construction for it to take 3 to 5 years to stick. Follow-up question then, when we do other types of projects, whether it's resurfacing of tennis courts or construction of other amenities, let's say skate park, or any number of amenities, do we measure the payback period, and what would that exercise look like?
When you're talking about park amenities such as tennis courts, no, we don't necessarily measure a payback because you're providing just a general amenity for use of the district. I think similarly, it's not used as often as maybe it could be.
Maybe swimming pool or something where you have a more fee-based structure.
Correct. I think that's where it makes more sense, and that's what we're talking about here. Is we're talking about this project from a revenue point of view, not just all the other benefits that the project could provide. Creating access for individuals who are less abled compared to general population and things like that. That this path would also provide that benefit. But we've pretty much been looking at this as a revenue sort of concept.
Yeah. So as we look at what we would call in the corporate world cost centers and revenue centers, this area of the park district budget we've carved out as its own, and given it, I think, some enhanced scrutiny. And so we're discussing it with quite some length, the thresholds this would need to cross in order to gain approval. And it's I think it's an important discussion because we do take this amenity seriously, and yet I think it's important that we're also thoughtful about the way we invest in it over time. We've talked about a few different ways to manage this investment and manage the debt associated with it. Sounds like we're hearing as a board a move toward receptivity toward the 20-year option, and I appreciate knowing that it is under $9,000 per year for the extra 10 years. I would be curious to see what, if any, concerns we have about the next, say, 3 years in terms of revenue, and if you've seen anything new in the last 4 to 5 weeks for fall registrations. That was an area of discussion that came up recently, because we're trying to forecast what 2021 looks like with finite information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't believe our registration has picked up significantly since the sluggish start we had to fall. We're really seeing that people want to be outside, not inside. And so I don't believe our projections are going to get better than what the Finance Committee looked at in their last meeting.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And just a last, I guess, question or point of clarification. It's not unusual for one program to pay for another to help, in a way, all ships rise. The the investment in playgrounds is not something that takes away from tennis courts, for example, or the investment in a beach house doesn't take away from whether or not somebody enjoys the nature center. And so I would think about golf in a similar way, although not everyone uses it. There is a halo effect benefit for the rest of the district. And those are my comments for now.
I don't see any other hands up. Commissioner Wolf, I believe this is still your golf committee report.
Thank you. So I guess at this time, if there are no further questions or conversations, could we have a motion?
Could I make a motion that we do move forward with the 20-year financing plan and do the golf cart paths?
Could I make a clarification before I second? It sounded like the consensus was that we would send the funding discussion to the Finance Committee to discuss further. So for this meeting, we probably just want to make a motion to move forward with the cart paths in the current budget cycle.
Correct.
So Todd,
I'll amend my motion to be to move forward with the cart paths in the current budget cycle.
And I will second it.
Any other comments or questions?
Well, just a couple of details. I think we're talking about what, 800,000? I'm going to make sure that I've got that correct. Is that correct?
It's currently in our capital projects plan, last page of your packet, at $850,000. That is cost estimates developed with our architect who designed it. We obviously, as with any project, we need to bid it first to know what the actual numbers are.
Of course. And are we still thinking that this is going to go this year, like in this calendar year? Is that correct? I want to make sure.
No, I don't believe it's going to do much more than get underway. Maybe towards the tail end of December. The issue is going to be, you have to trench, you have to put the subgrade down, and then you have to put the asphalt in. The asphalt plants are going to be long closed before we get to that portion of the project. So we can do the other work throughout the winter. So something might start in December, but it's not going to be significant to this year's actual cash flow.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to go ahead.
No, I was going to say, the bidding process comes back that the project is significantly higher. Would we revisit that as a board?
You have to. It has to come back to the board for a vote. So at that point, the board could reject the bids.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Thank you.
I kind of like Todd's initial motion and not the revised motion. So are we going to do one motion or are we going to do two?
What was the difference?
The difference was the specificity of the financing over 20 years.
I'm comfortable with that motion.
Different feelings on that than, yeah.
My thought behind that is that we're already spelling that out, and perhaps we wouldn't be debating this to death and drawing it out even further in the Finance Committee if we're already spelling it out.
Yeah.
So I'm comfortable with the 20-year. I'm comfortable with either one of them.
So I think the specific motion would have to say using operational debt over a 20-year period, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So,
Is that
so
accurate,
Todd,
Director
if
Wilson?
that's your motion, I would revise my second to support that. I agree with Gordon. If we want to specify that now, I think it's a good idea.
Okay, let's specify that now. So going with the revenue bonds over a 20-year period.
Operational
My motion
debt.
is operational debt, whatever the word of the day is.
How about we do this? How about I try and articulate the motion, and if I get it right, Todd, you say so moved, and someone else say seconded. So the motion is to proceed with the continuous cart path project at the Wilmette Golf Club, utilizing a 20-year operational debt financing model.
Correct. So moved.
And I will second.
Any
All right.
comments or questions?
I have a comment. Is there anything else we need to evaluate under capital spending or other projects that could benefit from this same operational debt instrument?
We could, when I look at most of the remaining projects, very few, if any, as I scroll through them, are revenue generating, more maintenance. And so as Commissioner Murdoch had articulated his philosophy of this type of debt should be used for when a new revenue source could be generated, that doesn't have to be the way everyone looks at it. And it's, like I said, we used it for the parking lot at the community center once upon a time. I believe Commissioner Murdoch would say maybe he wouldn't be in support of that at this point. But so I don't see anything that fits that bill of new revenue similar to the cart path.
Okay, I just want to be sure that if we're evaluating one type of project, we look at all projects equally and do not single it out as something exceptional.
Mhm.
But thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, but I think it is exceptional in that it has revenue attached to it. You know.
Yep.
Good point.
Yeah.
Are we ready?
I don't
to
have
take
any
a vote?
questions.
Any more? Yeah, any further discussion? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Commissioner Abbott,
No.
Commissioner Murdoch,
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Clark,
Okay, turn it on.
Sorry, President. I guess yes.
Commissioner Wolf,
No.
Commissioner Goebel,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. I think that's all for the golf report.
All right. Next is the Financial Planning and Policy Committee meeting. Commissioner Goebel.
Yes, the Financial Planning and Policy Committee met earlier this month. Our primary item on the agenda was to review the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Review. Superintendent Foy and our auditors walked through it and in good detail, and the committee felt that it was thorough and appropriate, and we recommended that the board consider it in an upcoming meeting. That will be in the October meeting when the final version of the audit is available to us. Once again, the district also received a financial stewardship recognition, and we'll discuss that further in the October meeting as well. We also gave guidance on the upcoming budget cycle, which we'll talk further about, but in summary recommended no fee increases and keeping a very fiscally responsible approach to the 2021 budgeting cycle. And additionally, the Financial Planning and Policy Committee will be looking at measures that can be put in place to reflect diversity, inclusion, and equity in upcoming meetings. The staff will be leading this initial pass-through of policies, and then we will review as a committee and then make a recommendation to the board. I do feel like this is an opportunity for the Park District to be a leader in the community with respect to issues of DEI, and I'm excited about our work as a group on that. And that is my report for this committee.
I would like Commissioner Goebbels as chairman of the Finance Committee to spell out the percentage increase in fees and in salaries this year. What percentage was that?
That is 0%. We are
0%.
recommending keeping them flat and reflecting the current economic status. Thank you, Commissioner Abbott. And that's my report.
Great. And is there sort of an update based on our more recent results about what our deficit for this year will be? Originally, it was going to be about 600,000. There was some work done by Superintendent Foy and Executive Director Wilson that suggested we were going to lose more. It looks like we maybe are losing another 400,000 roughly. We're close to roughly $1 million deficit now. Is that fair to say? Maybe that's for Superintendent Foy at this point.
Yeah, I'll let her chime in. I believe the projections we discussed in the Finance Committee for year end, we're looking at closer to a $1.5, $1.6 million deficit. And we have plans to revise that and bring that, look at it again, keep revising it and bring it forward again to the next Finance Committee.
Well, what is this $800,000? Well, we're not going to spend it this year. We're spending it next year, but okay, never mind. I'll table that.
Well, but the impact that 800,000 would have on the bottom line would be zero, because you're going to have the inflow of the bond proceeds. So those two will offset, and then over time you pay off. So the expenses spread out over the 20-year period.
And that is true. I'm sorry. With the projections, Gordon, it's a good question. The projections do anticipate that we have deferred $2 million worth of capital expenditures for this year. And I think all commissioners have to keep that in mind. And we have pushed that to the side. Doesn't mean that we're not going to do those projects at some point, but we are trying to just pinch our pennies as best we can for this year. And that includes a $2 million deferral.
Yeah, and likely to do the same next year.
Perhaps we'll be talking.
Yeah.
I want to say the audit. I mean, Amy, you and I have been on this board for 8 years, and the audits better every year. Obviously, Steve's background. I think we're the beneficiaries of that, and it's come back cleaner and cleaner. So. We don't have it here to look at, but we looked at the draft version in the finance meeting, and it looks good.
Okay, moving on. We have new business is the next. I'm sorry, unfinished business. Hopefully none. All right, hearing none, we move on to new business.
Again, this is the resolution for the parcel located between the Green Bay Trail and Richmond. And so approved once before at these same terms by the board. The only thing really different in this document is in section 3, where we name the current homeowner. So we had to update that as the property is transferred by way of sale.
Yep. Anybody got any questions?
Oh, this is a long standing saga.
I would move that we do that. That we proceed.
All right, let's go for a roll call vote.
We need a second from
Second from
Commissioner Abbott. Great. Roll call vote. Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch?
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
The resolution is approved.
All right. Could we get a motion to adjourn and a second, please?
So
I'll make
moved.
that motion. Oh, second.
All right, we're going to give the motion to Commissioner Murdoch and the second to Commissioner Wolf.
Roll
Wait a
call,
minute, I was
please.
first. No, I'm kidding.
Just stop.
We should discuss that.
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch?
Yes.
Commissioner Schisler?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Got
night.
a
Good
lot of
night.